All right, at 6:01 p.m., this meeting of the MVWSD School Board is called to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have some representatives from Stevenson Elementary School here to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move on to the roll call of trustees.
Christian,
Laura Blakely, Laura Berman,
Lambert,
Devin Conley. Let the record reflect that all 5 trustees are present. We'll now move on to item 1C, approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments from trustees? We'll take public comment. If you're a member of the public and you'd like to comment on the agenda for this evening, you may do so in Zoom by raising your hand or pressing star 9 on your phone. If you're in person, you can bring a yellow card to the speaker's podium. Seeing as there is no public comment at this time, are there comments or a motion from trustees?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On a motion made by trustee Blakely and seconded by trustee Berman, the board voted unanimously to approve the agenda as presented. We're now ready for item 2, our school showcase. Tonight we have Stevenson Elementary School and Principal Lambert here to lead them in their presentation.
Good evening, trustees and Superintendent Rudolph. We are all very happy to be here this evening to present something special about Stevenson. We have student leadership opportunities, 2 of them, as a matter of fact, our junior coach program and our student leadership team. And I would like to have our advisors introduce themselves, and then we'll hear from the students.
Hi, thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Lauren Logan, and I am an advisor for the student leadership at Stevenson. I teach 4th grade there, and this is my 3rd year teaching at Stevenson. Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Chloe Alessi. I teach 5th grade. This is my 3rd year at Stevenson, and I'm super lucky. I advise junior coaches and student leadership. Hi, I'm Mary Shetman. I'm also a 5th grade teacher at Stevenson, and this is my 2nd year. And I am advisor for the junior coaches.
Go ahead, a couple of slides.
Hello, my name's Lydia. I'm in grade 4. Playworks is a very creative way to play safely and everyone can join in. The 4th and 5th graders have leadership roles in this part. This is very important to a school of Stevenson. Hello, I'm Hadley and I'm in 4th. Hello, I'm Hadley and I'm in 4th grade. This is how junior coaching works in Stevenson. So many people wanted to join that we had to make 2 teams, Team Sting and Team Raise. Everyone has 1 or 2 shifts per week for different grades. Students are trained by Playworks coaches, and your duties help during recess and lunch. Next slide, please. Hello, I'm Olivia, and I'm in grade 4. We as junior coaches are able to support our Stevenson community by hitting all grade levels and in in helping in helping all grade levels in understanding how to properly participate in games, guiding students when disagreements arise regarding rules and guidelines, school community mentor in offering a positive interaction with other students, being respectful, having a nice tone to students instead of being strict. Next slide, please. We, you are able to distinguish us from other students because we wear a purple junior coach shirt and a lanyard that says junior coaches. Next slide, please. There has been many successes in junior coaching. Some of these are we have implied rules for fights and all that instead of just our own opinion. We also were able to help younger kids. Finally, we were able to be a nice role model.
Next slide, please. And thank you, junior coaches. Here are some images of our students, junior coaches in action at our school during recess and lunch. And we'll go on to our next opportunity at leadership. Thank you, coaches. Before you hear from student leadership, we wanted to just share a bit about how the program works at Stevenson. So all 4th and 5th grade students are welcome to join. They just have to apply. We meet each Monday at lunch where they plan and execute their projects, and there are no officers. All of the students work and collaborate to experience the different leadership opportunities. So I will hand it over now to leadership.
Next slide, please. Hi, I'm Audrey, and I'm a representative of student leadership from 5th grade. Some projects that student leadership have done are a fundraiser for Turkey and Syria after the earthquake, and we are currently working on a project for plastic awareness. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm also from leadership, and I'm in 5th grade. We have also created a fundraiser for the Silicon Valley Animal Control Authority and for Hope's Corner, where we donated, organized a food/errands drive and delivered that to Hope's Corner. My name is Millen, and I'm in 5th grade. I'm a junior coach and in student leadership. But today I'll be talking about student leadership. Another project that we run is a spirit week. Another project that we run is kindness tickets, where students get handed tickets if they do something nice, and if the grade level with the most tickets get the prize. And another project that we run is Spirit Week, where there are days such as Crazy Sock Day and Pajama Day. Finally, we have also created chalk drawings for testing to encourage students and have a positive environment for them to do their testing. Next slide, please. So how does student leadership run? Student leadership is all can run. We create slideshows, present them, advertise for them, and decide on projects and fundraise as a group. The way that it works is we divide it into 3 different jobs, and those are advertising and communication, logistics and execution, and research and outreach. Advertising and communication handles emails and puts posters around the school to raise awareness. They also go on the loudspeaker. Logistics and execution does a lot of the smart details. They figure out the rules for the kindness tickets and print it out. Kindness ticket that we wanted to use, and they'll also handle rewards if there are any. And research and outreach makes slideshows, and they also present them. And in the top right, you can see an example of a slideshow that we made for the Turkey and Syria fundraiser, and a Google Sheets in the top left that we use to have teachers sign up for the presentations, and that's also handled by research and outreach. Next slide, please. Some skills that we learn from student leadership are collaboration and leadership, and these are helpful as we learn to become a better leader and decide on decisions and how to make a good fundraiser. Some other skills we learned are presentation skills and how to make a slideshow. Another skill we learned is organization skills. To help our community, we have done many projects with kindness tickets. Each time a student does something nice, they get a ticket. This project is connected to No Place for Hate, helping students be more kind with no hate in our school. The top left image shows students signing the banner. The tickets are given out by yard duties. The tickets are then given to the teachers who keep them in a place such as a bag or a box. Then the tickets are then counted by grade, and the grade with the most tickets gets a prize. To help our world, we've created different fundraisers. For example, we've created a fundraiser to help Turkey and Syria after the big earthquake. And right now, we are currently working on a project with the Monterey Bay Aquarium on their quest to decrease plastic levels in the ocean. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from trustees? Not at this time. Thank you. Let's all give a round of applause.
Thank you very much. You guys were awesome. Thank you, board, for giving us this opportunity.
Well, we truly appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. I know it's close to dinner time and bedtime and all of those good things on a school night, but it is wonderful to hear from you and learn about the programs that you're doing to encourage student leadership. So thank you for joining us. If you're a member of the public and you'd like to comment on this item, you may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. You can also approach the podium and present a yellow card. Seeing as there are no comments at this time, thank you so much for coming. We will move on to item 3, special recognition. This is our employee recognition for the Turtle Award, and we'll hear from Dr. Rudolph.
All right, well, thank you, Stingrays and Principal Lambert, as well as the staff for creating that presentation. It's always heartwarming to have students sort of sharing and providing a little voice. Sometimes we miss that, but it's always great to hear. So just as usual, we continue to recognize employees. And we started this not sort of understanding how many people will get recognized, but this month I'm pleased to announce another 23 employees have demonstrated exceptional collaboration and teamwork with their colleagues or students in the district. They've been listed here, but I just want to congratulate them, and their total awards will be put in the mail tomorrow, and they'll arrive either Friday, depending on courier, or they'll arrive on Monday.
Thank you. It's a wonderful program. We're really thrilled to have the Turtle Awards present. If you are a member of the public and you'd like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or approach the podium and present a yellow card. This is the Special Recognition Employee Award. As there is no public comment at this time, we will move on to item 4, the consent agenda. Are there any comments from trustees regarding the consent agenda? Seeing as there are none, we will take public comment. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or you can approach the podium and present a yellow speaker card.
Nobody's on. I'm waiting. Yes.
We have one speaker in public. We'll get a timer up on the board. And former trustee Nelson will have 3 minutes when he is ready to begin.
Good evening. I'm glad to be recognized by the chair. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the item on the agenda that has to do with the middle school math update, the thing that shows the different tracks. to review, when I was on the board and Common Core was starting to come up, there was a letter that we got about this 3-track math system in middle schools that came from the a unanimous letter from the math teachers at Crittenden that said they were against the idea of setting up this kind of 3-track system. They didn't think it was good for the schools. They didn't think it was good for the kids. One of the things I want to show you is, here's, oops, it's the wrong one. Just a second. Here's the result again for the 8th grade performance in the Common Core. You notice that Hispanics in this district, it's about a factor of 4 less performance than the Asians or whites. This is one of the things that they were worried about. If you go look at the 8th grade, this equivalent chart from the school systems that were compared, in the chart for how they do math, you'll find that there are several of these districts, fortunately they didn't put the data there, that have much better ratios for not the Hispanics, because you can't tell what percentage of SED, but if you look at the SED percentage, we see difference here. For some of those schools, they're much better than the performance than we want to have at ours. So those are the ones that should be looked at. I'll send you the list, but it's something like if we look at the Los Altos School District, the SEDs there are 38% performing, while in Mountain View, the SEDs are only 13% meeting standard. If we go look at Palo Alto Unified, it is 34% making it. If we go to Cupertino is 61% making performance standard. You could say that's unusual, but if you go look at some other ones like Fremont, 32% of Fremont are making standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nomson. Are there any comments or a motion from trustees regarding the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On a motion made by trustee Blakely and seconded by trustee Berman, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. We will now move on to item 5, communications. We will begin with employee organizations. Are there any representatives of employee organizations who would like to address the board at this time? You can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or in person, you can approach the podium and submit a yellow speaker card. Seeing as there are none at this time, we will move on to item 5B, district committees. Are there any representatives of district committees who would like to address the board at this time? Trustee Blakely.
Is CHAC a district committee? I wanted to just give an update as the JPA rep. I'm not sure if I should do that or at the end of the meeting.
That might be part of board updates, I think, because you're the board appointee to it, but I don't think it's a district committee.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for clarifying, though. Seeing as there are none at this time, we'll move on to updates from the superintendent.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick items. The first one is I know we, at least the district isn't on Twitter. We sort of paused, but a recent tweet by Elmo just went viral. It's a non-word tweet, and he just said Elmo's just checking in, and he just wanted to know how people are doing. And I think it just sort of reiterates. It was a great article in Inc. magazine, but it just reiterates sort of the notion of connecting with people and checking in to see how they're doing and really building space to make that happen. So I think that's really great, especially just considering all the things that people are faced with, which is why I want to give these kudos. Our negotiation teams, when I first arrived, I remember it was pretty heated. And since then, we've had our ups and downs. But, you know, over the last 3 years, we've had a lot of labor peace because of a multi-year deal. But I just want to commend both MVEA as well as the district team for the tone and tenor of the negotiations. They really have been working to solve problems and working really hard to sort of understand each other's positions and provide really solid recommendations for how to work through those. And I think both sides have been working collaboratively, giving and taking a little bit. But it's just a really good tone and tenor. And so I think in the spirit of Elmo, I just want to say like the negotiation team is really doing a great job. And I think that's reflected also in the negotiation news that we continue to publish. But just wanted to congratulate or continue to encourage both of those teams to continue to look at each other and check in to see how each other are doing. Speaking of how we're doing, just remember that winter break is upon us and we have a couple holidays that are coming. So we have about one more week for all of our students. The end of the trimester is also here. So I know at the middle schools, just because I have a kid there, there's a mad rush to make sure he, as well as all of his friends, have all of their work turned in. So I get to see some of the text messages that go about, just them all working together to meet those requirements. But just want to remind people that winter break is coming, and if you are traveling, please be safe. I know that some of us like to go to, and we often call it ski week. And so some of us like to go up to Tahoe to go skiing. It has been a little treacherous over the last couple of weeks. They have been getting pounded with snow. So I just want to encourage whether you're going to the beach, whether you're staying at home, or whether you're going to Tahoe, just be careful during the winter break. And the final, just quick update is just we have a community check-in tomorrow at 3:30. We'll be talking about a couple of things as well as giving a board update. But just wanted to put that out there that we do have those. And I know some people, while our attendance sort of goes ups and downs, still stays around the same. I know that people, when we look at the counts, we see that they're watching them afterwards. So I just want to remind people that those things are taking place.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We will now move on to item 6, community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. To address the board, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or approach the podium and submit a yellow speaker card. It looks like we have one in-person speaker, so we will get a 3-minute timer up on the screen. And former trustee Nelson, you're welcome to begin when you're ready.
Good evening. There's two things having to do with how you do agendas that I would like to comment on. One of them, I think it is sort of a shame that this district, this board hasn't appointed a board policy subcommittee. The Palo Alto Board Subcommittee takes care of things like looking over things so there aren't policy issues that are getting changed in the wording that aren't what the board would probably want to do. It also does things that, unlike you, where you're not having a second reading on anything, they always do second readings on things that are board policies. Now, I don't know why there's been such a big backlog, but looks to me if you're all the way down to, I have to go through most of the alphabet to add what board policies are being updated, that there's something that is lagging or lacking with how you update your board policies. I don't know if that's your responsibilities or the secretary to your board's responsibility, but it's a little bit shaky when you don't do board policy adoptions with a second reading. To me, that shows a lack of care in how you're doing your oversight. The other thing I'd like to mention is when I make a comment like I did in the middle school math update, I would really like it to be under the item that I'm making a comment about, not just generic, I'm making a comment on a consent agenda. It doesn't make any sense to say, oh, he's making a report or he's making a comment on the consent agenda. I'm not. I made a comment on item 4F middle school math updates. I would appreciate it, Madam President, if you could work out with the secretary to this board that those get assigned and put under the item, the agenda item that the person is talking about when they're talking about consent agenda item comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you. We had not had a previous yellow speaker card for you on the previous item. We will now move on to item 7, review and discussion. We will start with 7A, the Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP, mid-year report with Chief Academic Officer Kathy Bauer and our Chief Business Officer, Dr. Rebecca Westover.
Good evening, trustees. Share my screen. And okay. So I am going to present tonight, and then Dr. Westover will be here if you have questions related to the budget. As you know, our strategic plan guides our work, and when we created our last strategic plan, the Strategic Plan 2027, we made sure it aligned with the 2 cycles of the district's LCAP, and we are coming to the end of our first cycle this year, and we'll be entering the new cycle for 24-25. And just as a reminder, we must create a 3-year LCAP each year that outlines our goals and strategies for improving achievement. And our LCAP includes our budget overview for parents, which helps stakeholders understand our funding, and our federal addendum, which helps our stakeholders understand how we're using our federal funds. So the mid-year update is new for this year. We are required to present a report of the annual update to the LCAP and the local control funding formula budget overview for parents on or before February 28th of each year, beginning this year. The mid-year update is presented for discussion only, and there's not a required template. And we must share all available mid-year outcome data related to our metrics and our mid-year expenditures and implementation data on all of our actions. So in terms of our budget overview for parents, the enacted budget included changes or reductions that were not anticipated when we did our budget in June last year. And so we had some impact to our adopted budget, and this is explaining that. For example, for our LCFF, for our supplemental funding, this is funding that's directly generated for our unduplicated students. We were projecting $3.3 million. And we had a slight increase in that in the budget. So we had a difference of $62,000. So this is just showing where our differences were and where our projected revenue differences were. We also show here our total budgeted general fund expenditures in comparison to our budgeted expenditures in our LCAP and our budgeted expenditures in our LCAP for our high needs students. So our LCAP expenditures haven't changed, but we did see a difference in our total budgeted general fund expenditures overall. So for mid-year progress, for goal 1, we have 15 metrics, 22 actions. 10 of our metrics actually have mid-year progress, and 5 will be updated at the end of the year. The majority of our metrics that we can't update right now have to do with results from our LCAP survey and dashboard local indicator data that we don't present until June. 13 of our actions have been fully or partially implemented. We've provided comprehensive reports on our CAS results and our iReady ELA and math results. And a couple of our things that we see as of December is our reclassification rate being 14.9%, and our percentage of long-term ELs is only 2.8%. Some highlights from the goals. We've We've hired our instructional coaches. We have an ELD coach and a tech coach. We were unable to hire a science coach this year. We continue to have RTI at all of our sites. We've implemented a newcomer plan this year where we hired 4 newcomer teachers, 1 for each middle school, and 2 teachers to be shared among the elementary schools. We continue with our MTSS implementation, focusing on our coordination of services teams, student study teams, and our data cycles. And we've integrated with PowerSchool to make it easier. We have our dyslexia plan, and we'll be bringing an update to you at the February 29th meeting, and our early literacy team is up and running with their teachers and instructional assistants serving over 200 students at Castro, Mistral, Montaloma, and Therakoff. So just some highlights. Some of the funds that we estimated, and our estimated expenditures for Goal 1 are just over $7 million. Goal 1 is our largest budget, our largest goal, and really focuses on most of our academic and learning initiatives and actions. So for Goal 2, talking about student social, emotional health, and behavior, we have 5 metrics with mid-year progress and 6 that will be updated. Not all 9 actions have been fully or partially implemented. Our average daily attendance right now is 95.6%, and 15.6% of our students have been identified as chronically absent. Some highlights: we have at-risk supervisors. We have all of our actions in improving attendance, both overall and addressing chronic absenteeism for our homeless students. In this goal, we have seen a decrease in chronic absenteeism for our homeless students of 10%, and currently we see an additional decrease in February. We have our behavior response standards that were developed in the spring of 2023 and have been trained on and implemented this year. Goal 2 budget, some highlights. Our estimated expenditures for Goal 2 are $1.3 million. For Goal 3, we have 9 metrics and 7 actions, and this goal is about our inclusive and welcoming culture. We have 2 metrics with mid-year progress. The majority of our metrics in this goal are tied to our LCAP survey, and all 7 actions are fully or partially implemented. We've done quite a bit of professional development on diverse cultures for more responsive customer support. And we've had over 700 people attend parent university sessions. And I just want to say, as I move to this slide, I somehow did not update this slide when I originally updated the presentation, and I apologize. So I did update it. Ms. Villalba is going to update a revised copy of the presentation to the website, and I've given you a copy of the revised slide. So for actions here, we have our school and community engagement facilitators. Our facilitators are working hard at all of our sites to support our families. Our district equity advisory committee is meeting monthly. Again, like I mentioned, our parent university is running strong. Our equity framework pilot has been completed, and we're making revisions and are ready to really use that moving into the next school year. And we do have worked with you to develop more processes for equitable access to our choice schools. Oops. So for Goal 3, the budget, our estimated expenditures are just over $1 million. So for Goal 4, 11 metrics, 4 actions. They've all been partially or fully implemented. Currently, 84% of our teachers are considered highly qualified. We've had some teacher misassignments of English learners and other teachers, although we've had waivers for these teachers while they were fixing their misassignment. And we do have some vacant teacher positions right now. We have our partnership with the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project, and we're serving 40 teachers this year that are working to clear their credential. We're creating assessments to gather data on the district's current approach to professional development, differentiation, and ongoing staff support. The Professional Development Committee will convene in the spring, and we have participated in a review of our hiring policies and procedures, and we're updating our practices for hiring as we move into hiring season. Budget here, and then our estimated expenditures are about $500,000. Goal 5 is around equitable distribution of resources. 6 metrics and 7 actions. 6 actions are fully or partially implemented. Looking at our metrics, 90% of our submitted work orders have been completed. 100% of our students have access to copies of their standards aligned instructional materials. Our maintenance and operation team has been doing site walkthroughs to rate cleanliness at schools and find trouble areas. We continue to be a one-to-one district and provide technology devices. And as we purchase new Chromebooks, they will have the capability of connecting to our CBRS network. Dr. Westover has been working to review standards for facilities and resources. And we have been implementing second chance breakfast and lunch every day and providing meals for students. Estimated expenditures for goal 5 are about $800,000. And our last goal 6, which was added last year, really focuses on efforts at Castro School. There's 19 metrics and 5 actions in this goal. All 5 actions are fully or partially implemented. And we've been monitoring the metrics. We have 8 metrics with mid-year progress and then 11 that will be updated at the end of the year. You can see as part of our presentations, 29.4% of students were chronically absent. So we have some work to do on supporting students at Castro. And we are working, as you know, on a plan specifically to support that school. The early literacy team is serving 62 students at Castro School. We've hired an additional at-risk supervisor, an additional 0.5 FTE school and community engagement facilitator. The wellness center has been up and running, and we do have that transitional kindergarten class this year at Castro. So our estimated expenditures for goal 6 are $871,000. So things to consider. Just this update is a new requirement and will be coming to you each year by February 28th to provide this update. This is in addition to the annual update, which is required at the end of each school year, which reports on the same information. And it does require quite a bit of staff time. There's not a requirement and you're not required to approve it. So our next steps is we'll continue to work to encourage families to complete the LCAP survey, which is open now. And we'll start work on our 2024-25 LCAP and shift work on the second interim budget report and development of next year's budget. So at this time, I'll stop sharing and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bauer. Are there questions from trustees? Trustee Blakely.
I just have one small question, which I missed when I submitted questions earlier. The second chance breakfast and second chance lunch, is that in addition to the regular lunch that we serve, or?
Second chance breakfast happens at recess time. So they have breakfast and second chance breakfast, and then you have lunch. There's not a second chance lunch.
Okay, so there is a breakfast before school and then during recess.
And then lunch, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
I have a follow-up question to that. What time is the morning breakfast served before school? What time can kids show up and have access to breakfast?
I will maybe ask Dr. Westover. When I was a principal, it usually happened about 20 to 30 minutes before school started, but I'll leave that question to Dr. Westover.
Okay.
And actually our director of child nutrition is here, Debbie Austin. So I'll actually bounce it over to Debbie because I'm sure she'd love to speak about child nutrition. Debbie, are you able to unmute yourself?
I can also come back to this question during the health and wellness because there's another opportunity there. So
okay,
it's okay. I'll come back.
Trustee Chang, Vice President Chang, excuse me.
Thank you. I had a question about the early in the presentation, Ms. Bauer mentioned that the science coach, there was a difficulty in hiring. Could you provide some extra context to that? Thank you.
Sure. We have had the same science coach for several years, and he ended up taking a leave from his position for this year. And we posted for the position and we tried to recruit and hire, and we just were not able to find someone to fill the position. So the position has gone unfilled this year.
A position like that, is it for inside district, like a TOSA kind of thing, or is it for like external applicants as well?
We tried both ways. So we posted both internally and externally.
Thank you.
And I just had a quick question. You know, as a parent in the district, I've been getting the requests to fill out my LCAP survey. And something that I've noticed with the text messages in particular, but some of the communication is it's brief and to the point, but if I didn't know what the LCAP was, that is not conveyed to me in the request to fill it out or why it's important. So I'm wondering if we can, you know, we had an email recently from a parent regarding our use of acronyms in our presentations, which I thought was really interesting. But I'm wondering if in this case for the outreach to families, we can explain a little bit of how this is an important way to let the district know how they and their student are doing, or something like that.
I think we can do that. We'll be doing a big push next week. So I will work directly with Ms. Hausman on that.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to public comment. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or you can approach the podium and present a yellow speaker card. We have one speaker in person, so we will put a timer up on the board for 3 minutes. And you may unmute when you are ready.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about this issue about this measurables. One of the interesting things is we no longer have the API, which was a conglomeration in a certain proportion of the math, the English language, and the science. There are sites now that does that conglomeration, and they're interestingly done in a way such they use the scaled scores rather than the big chunks. And the interesting thing there is you can get a finer gradation in how you grade it. And so there are sites on there. I'll send you the information on this one. What it shows is how our schools do relative to other schools. This one is quasi-API, so that one doesn't change versus years. It shows where these are just the elementary schools are relative to the something like 5,800 other elementaries in the state of California. As you'll see, segregation shows itself quite clearly. By the top two, they're like 50 and 77 rank out of the 5,600. And we have our school down at the bottom that's segregated in a different way that's below 5,000 in the ranking there. So that's one of the things to think about when you look at these issues. The other thing is I gave to the superintendent and will send to you some specific comments. The chronic absentee rate in the report, this is page 24, 25, doesn't really have the numbers in there for what the mid-year numbers is. I know the mid-year young numbers for Castro are actually pretty good for what the percentage is. They've improved it significantly over what it was last year, and it's reported. I also know that Power School will report at any particular time what the chronic absentee rate is for the whole district and specifically for the two sites, Castro and Therkoff, where it's really important to get those rates down. So I hope when this is done in the future, or if it's before it's submitted, that you can put those actual numbers in there, the percent numbers out of Power School for mid-year, rather than just what's in there now. If you go look, it's pretty amorphous. So this percent number is important. The other thing is at-risk supervisors. I don't understand, because it says there's 1,088,000 for this positions and only 398,000 was spent. That's only 36.5% of the whole budget. for these very important at-risk supervisors, particularly the one at Castro is very important. And the other thing is that
Thank you. We will now move on to comments from trustees. Are there comments from trustees? And please, if you have further comments, they can always be submitted in writing to the board. Thank you. All right, Vice President Chang.
Thank you. I know that these updates are just for information, but that was interesting. Like really, like that we saw that like many places the question of equity was brought up. One lens that might be interesting for the board to consider in the future when we look at these annual school site goals is our ecology and environmental footprint on some of these things. So like we're collecting kind of these reports on how we're doing as a district, the question of how we're doing on environmentally speaking could be something interesting on some of the, for some departments and some staff in some areas for site levels to gather that and kind of have that as part of their LCAP as we're trying to be a more sustainable place for kids now and for their future. Separately, the context on the science coach not being built, not left unfilled. It is an interesting question for us as a community because we are, I understand that a position like that, you need to have a credential, but it's also true that Mountain View probably has more scientists than most communities around the country, if not the world. So while those people probably don't have a multi-subject credential, but it's still something, it's a valuable position. And I think it's important that we find some way to staff somebody who is an expert in science education to assist the district in that position.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation as well. This is a detailed and lengthy process, and so getting updates along the way is very helpful. I think it's also nice to see the goal number 6 regarding Castro called out separately and to look at the budgeting around that we've devoted an extra $871,000 there this year. Whether or not that's the perfect amount of money, I think is up for debate, but it is good to see it called out in detail and to understand better how that's being spent. We will now move on to item 7B, the Health and Wellness Annual Goals Progress Report, with our Coordinator of Health and Wellness, Brian White, and our Director of Student Supports and Special Education, Karen Jinbo.
Good evening, trustees. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started with our presentation. So tonight, I will be sharing about our trimester 2 wellness policy annual goals progress report. And this report will share updates on health and wellness data and actions, which include social emotional learning, mental health support, and behavior. And I want to make sure you know our backup materials include a full written report. So looking at alignment, our update aligns with our strategic plan as we continue developing our whole school, whole community, whole child model. And these are our 23-24 wellness policy annual goals. Local school wellness policy goals are written in compliance with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010, and they cover nutrition promotion, nutrition education, physical activity, and other school-based activities. We'll start by looking at our trimester 2 data, which covers attendance, behavior, social emotional learning, and mental health supports, and also our wellness policy goals. Here we have a 3-year attendance comparison through the month of December. So as you can see, our attendance continues to reflect a slight positive trend as compared to last year. The attendance rate through December 2023 was 95.35% as compared to 94.12% through December 2022 and 95% through December 2021. Behavior, of course, is an important measure of social emotional wellness, and the next several slides will show some of our behavior data. This first slide shows the percentage of students who have at least one state reporting incident in PowerSchool. As of December, that number was just under 8%. And for trimester 2 last year, by the end of trimester 2, that number was 13%. So we are seeing a decline in the number of individual students with incidents. This slide shows the 5 most frequently occurring behaviors. Those are 511, disruption and defiance, 501, caused attempted or threatened physical injury, 503, committed assault or battery on a school employee, which we will consider in more detail in the next slide, 504, used force or violence, and 510, obscene acts, profanity, and vulgarity. And these numbers here are the number of times that these behaviors pop up in incidents. So obviously incidents of physical behavior towards school staff are a special concern. Those are coded as 503, assault, battery on a school employee. As we've seen when we've looked at this data previously, incidents with this code continue to involve our youngest students. Here you can see that the majority of these incidents involved a student in TK, kindergarten, or first grade. And through December, there have been no incidents involving any student beyond 4th grade. And this is where we would expect to see this kind of behavior. It's among young children who are developing language, and they're learning how to recognize their own and others' emotions, learning how to practice self-control, and how to appropriately express their feelings. Turning to Sown to Grow, this data shows 95% of our students have accessed Sown to Grow this year, and 40% of written reflections have received teacher feedback. Last fall, the SEL survey identified students who self-assessed as feeling a low sense of belonging, and elementary principals are working with their CHAC clinicians and with their COST teams to address individual student needs. Elementary students will take the SEL survey again in the spring to assess growth. This year, CHAC is providing services to about 4% of elementary and 5.5% of middle school students. Your written report goes into more detail on that information, and students can access a variety of school-based services through CHAC, and I'm happy to report that we've been able to avoid CHAC waitlisting students this year. Pacific clinics serve students at Castro, Crittenden, Graham, Mistral, and Therakoff. And Lake Fall Pacific Clinics and MVWSD agreed to shift services from Mauna Loma to Mistral. And following an examination of referral data from the past 2 school years, Pacific Clinics and MVWSD agreed to shift those SLS and PEI services to Mistral to better align resources with student needs. Existing Mauna Loma students that were receiving services through Pacific Clinics are continuing to receive those services, so there's no service interruption there. The Wellness Center at Castro is in its 3rd year, and students are receiving a variety of services ranging from brief visits to Calming Corner to counseling check-ins with the Wellness Center specialist. This year, the Wellness Center has had contact with 143 individual students, which is over half of Castro students. The next 4 slides will update progress towards our wellness policy annual goals. These goals are intended to be fully in place by the end of the year. This year's nutrition promotion goal extends last year's dissemination of the Smart Snacks checklist and will be fully in place once principals have received training on disseminating information about the checklist to stakeholder groups and once they share information about the checklist with their parent and staff communities. Our nutrition education goal is mostly in place. To move to fully in place, site principals and myself will complete an activity where we identify areas where we can further integrate nutrition education standards and related actions. Our physical activity goal integrates with special education, and to move to fully in place, I'll be collaborating with special education staff to identify strategies for including students with disabilities and general education activities during recess and lunch. That resource will be aligned with MTSS, and it'll be included in the MTSS guidebook as a resource for staff. And lastly, our local school wellness policy identifies related activities. This year, we've greatly expanded the community mental health resources available on our virtual wellness center. And we are moving toward fully in place by updating the Wellness Center to ensure information and resources are comprehensively offered in Spanish. At our May meeting, the Health and Wellness Committee will do a deep dive into MTSS, and they'll be providing feedback on incorporating whole school, whole community, and whole child practices into that framework. I'd like to now give an overview of our trimester 2 health and wellness activities. The Health and Wellness Committee met on November 30th, and we are starting preparation for our 2024-25 review year. The SEL work group met on November 8th and January 25th, and we've been working with leadership team to establish key developmental competencies that will help guide our work, our SEL work moving forward. We've also included a resource map in our MTSS guidebook, which can be used in cost meetings and in other settings to help identify SEL interventions for students. Acknowledge Alliance continues to provide resilience coaching for staff. We've also been aligning SEL data and mental health services with MTSS, and we are making SEL data available to principals to use in UDC and cost conversations, and detailed information about those activities can be found in your written report. Director Jimbo and I continue to meet weekly with CHAC's Director of School-Based Services, as well as having regularly scheduled meetings with Pacific clinics. While most students access the Wellness Center for drop-in support, the Wellness Center provides a pretty broad range of services. And last spring, the Wellness Center specialist, who is a licensed clinical social worker, initiated intervention groups for newcomer students with complex trauma utilizing a curriculum called Fuerte. This spring, she'll also run 2 newcomer counseling groups with that curriculum. Recently, the board asked for information about how we support student mental health needs related to social media use, and I'm happy to go over some of that information. First, I'd like to share a brief summary of recent research on social media use and mental health. So while social media use can be associated with positive mental health outcomes, for example, through enhanced social support and identity building, social media use is also associated with increased risk of poor mental health outcomes like anxiety. We believe a number of school and community factors can either increase or mitigate that risk, but we're still learning about how different factors impact risk. In MVWSD, our Tier 1 level support for student mental health and social media use is our digital citizenship curriculum. As of January 8th, there were 155 lessons impacting 1,826 students across the district. And like any other health and wellness endeavor, providing digital citizenship during core instructional time is a challenge in the context of declining test scores. I also wanted to note that in October, there was a parent use session on technology and learning that focused on building digital resilience, and that session's recording is available online. We know that the parent-school relationship is essential to increasing positive mental health outcomes for social media use, and parents play a critical role in setting social media boundaries. Here are just a few practices that parents and schools should promote to support children's emotional and physical safety. When a student needs help related to social media use, as I mentioned, partnership between school parents and caregivers and the students are key. In addition to digital citizenship lessons, students can access school-based counseling to help address mental health concerns related to social media use. When students have a conflict online that impacts schools, restorative practices like peer or adult-led mediation can help kids move forward and teach new SEL skills. And of course, our anti-bullying policy informs our response to online harassment and bullying. Finally, when necessary, we involve our law enforcement partners to ensure student safety. Turning to considerations, some factors that are impacting how we move forward include recognizing the positive impact that our local school wellness policy has on student health, and that those annual goals are still in progress. We also want to emphasize the importance of integrating social emotional learning, equity, data, and MTSS as we move forward with our SEL actions. Graham and Crittenden recently administered the Winter Sun to Grow SEL survey, and a focus group including teachers and administrators will examine data and consider next steps for SEL at middle school. Finally, we are benefactors of MHSA and MHSSA funding, and we anticipate funding opportunities in future years will assist the sustainability of our wellness efforts. So our next steps as we look at trimester 2 and going into trimester 3 the rest of the year, here you can see those next steps. We look forward to presenting a final goal report prior to June 30th. This will include annual goal attainment, recommendations for next year's goals, SEL updates, and next steps. We have 2 more meetings of the Health and Wellness Committee, another couple meetings of the work group, of the SEL work group. We're looking forward to National Nutrition Month next month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We have an increased number of schools that are applying for the award from Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and we're continuing to collaborate with principals on health and wellness and MTSS. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for this opportunity to present about our work, and I'm happy to take any questions from board members.
Thank you very much, Director White. Are there questions from trustees? Vice President Chang.
Thank you, Director White. I did, from the presentation, it's my understanding that So2Grow is kind of like collects data. Can you explain more about what kind of instructional programs in SEL are being used at the school sites to like teach students social emotional learning, like
Absolutely.
programs that are being experimented at different sites? Thank you.
Yeah, so schools have a variety of different they've initiated that fit the needs of their schools. Some schools use Toolbox as a way to create consistent language to help kids regulate behavior and problem solve. We have Project Cornerstone is really active in our schools. Stevenson uses, I think, Project Impact, if I'm saying the name of that program correctly. We also have CHAC going into all of our schools and providing SEL lessons. So that provides a baseline that all students throughout all of our schools receive. And then a lot of our work on SEL is grounded in the idea of that kind of in-between practice, how we model that as teachers, how we respond to student needs. And so there's a variety of different initiatives that are happening across our district.
Are there any further questions from trustees? Trustee Lambert?
Yes. My question is, I'd like to know something about how well these services and interventions are received by both the students and by the parents. So I guess what I'm driving at is, do the parents and children feel comfortable using the services? Are there stigmas attached with using these services? Is it something that people really look forward to engaging in and coming back, time and time again?
That really varies, I think, with each individual school community. I know with some of our parents and some of our families, accessing mental health resources is something that adults do. It's something that we encourage our kids to do. I also know that in other parts of our community that's a little bit more of a challenge. Some of the things that we've been doing last year, Director Jimbo and I presented at a Parent U just about mental health and SEL to our parent community. And then what we're also doing is trying to create a consistent language in our community about SEL and mental health. We don't have a lot of data specifically related to how parents perceive the services, but we do have data from CHAC about about how teachers and students receive the SEL instruction that comes in through CHAC, and it's generally positive.
Thank you.
Trustee Berman?
So every time we talk about SEL, I think about how this is an opportunity to educate somebody who isn't quite sure what SEL is, or maybe has some misconceptions about what SEL might not be, that is kind of out there and exists out in the public. So I'm wondering if you could share, just in your position of expertise, to you, what is social emotional learning, and why as a school district are we so invested in our students' emotional intelligence?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So social emotional learning is basically a lifelong process through which people develop interpersonal skills, relationship skills, responsible decision making, social awareness, self-management, and so all of those different competencies kind of come together to make up what we call social emotional learning. And the reason why that's important, an important thing for us as a school district to focus on is that all of our teachers, our administrators, all of our staff are trusted adults in the lives of our kids. And our children spend an incredible amount of their childhood at school with us. And so we have this opportunity to help our children develop those skills that they'll need throughout their life, that they'll continue in developing throughout their life. And we really have an ethical obligation as trusted adults in the lives of children to do that. And so that's really why we're focused on that as a district.
Thank you. I'm fully supportive of everything you just said. Can you just share more about the SEL handbook and how you envision, say, a teacher using it for their students or in their classroom?
Absolutely. So as I've noted, we have a lot of different things happening with SEL across our district, and a lot of different good things happening across our district. One of the things that I've really seen visiting schools talking about SEL is just how the wealth of care and skills that we have with our teachers when it comes to supporting our students' SEL needs. What we don't have is we don't have a common set of expectations for our students. In other words, what do we want all of our kids to be able to do when it comes to SEL by the time they leave our system? And so what we're doing with the SEL guidebook is really getting teacher and administrator input so that we come up with the common language and common values about this is what we want our kids to walk away from Mountain View with in terms of SEL. And then that can be used, that resource is very practical, it's very specific, and it can be used by a cost team when they're talking about supporting an individual student's needs. It can be used by a school site as they talk about focus areas for their initiatives. It can be used by grade level teams or individual teachers when they think about what are my students' needs in my classroom, and how do I get specific about focusing on those needs. And when we talk about that, it's a lot of the stuff that we already do in terms of modeling, in terms of the programs that we have, but it's just really about being specific, structured, and having that common language.
Thank you so much.
I also had a question. Our population of newcomer students has increased. Are we doing, and some of them have been through traumatic experiences on their pathway here. Are we doing anything specific around addressing mental health for those students?
Yeah, so I think the cost team is using our MTSS system to have those critical conversations about students and talking about students' whole needs. So when we have a newcomer student coming in, having that conversation about their story, about what their needs are, and then connecting them with the appropriate resources is really important. The Wellness Center is, like I said, is using a curriculum that is specifically designed to support newcomers that are at risk for traumatic stress. And then, we also have chat clinicians that are working with newcomers, and our intent is to support our newcomer teachers as well with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that we have the Wellness Center supports at Castro, but we also have newcomer students across our district at many school sites, which has been a big change. I also had a question, regarding our homeless students, many of whom are concentrated at Castro Elementary School. Is there any coordination with, some of our students, their families may be in the safe parking lot here in Mountain View. They might be in county facilitated services or shelters. Is there any communication from the county about our students who are within their facilities? Do we get information like that? This might be more of a Jeff Chang question.
I think that might be more of a Jeff Chang question. Yeah, that's not something that we receive, that Director Jimbo or I receive direct communication on.
Okay, so we just kind of roll with the McKinney-Vento report in our cost analysis, but we don't necessarily get communication from other providers?
I'll jump in. A lot of that information is confidential. And so if it is shared across the county to Director Chang, it generally is under confidential cover because otherwise it's not releasable without the adults or the family's consent.
Thank you.
Just to jump in to partially answer the question, I will check with Priscilla, and this is something that we can get back to you in the near future about specifically our communication strategies with the county.
Yeah, I was just curious since I'm thinking about how we tailor our mental health supports for different populations, and then also who our partners are in that work. Trustee Berman.
I've been hearing that school districts in the future will be able to bill Medi-Cal for mental health services. And I'm just wondering if we're starting to get a sense of what that might look like here for us in our district. Maybe it's too soon.
So I'll jump in. Well, I'll jump in. It is too soon. It is. There are some collaborative meetings with the county at the moment, and our district is currently not a member of the pilot group, but there are collaborative opportunities for us to learn from other districts who are starting already.
My understanding is that's Bill 483, and it's going to be years before that's fully implemented for us, yes?
At the school site level, yes. At the county level, it has already started because of the bridge, the MHSSA bridge, and their ability to, because they have providers that have the correct licensure and we call it the codes or the numbers to be able to bill Medi-Cal. So at the county level, they can do that through their MHSSA grant personnel. But at the school site level, it is not. It will be several years.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Chang.
Thank you. A question perhaps might be for Director White, but may also be for Director Jeff Chain. In the question earlier about the SEL programs used at the school sites, you mentioned the Project Cornerstone toolbox. I was wondering if any school sites or school staff are using the Ruler program that's out of the Yale Center for Social Emotional Learning. And I don't know if either Director White or Director Chain know of any administrators or site level people using Ruler.
I don't know that any of our sites are using Ruler right now. That's not been something that's come up when I've had conversations with principals.
If there are no further questions from trustees, we will move on to public comment. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press *9 on your phone, or if you're here in public, you can approach the podium and submit a yellow speaker card. I don't have a speaker card on. Okay, you'll give me one. Okay, thank you. We have one speaker in public. I'm sorry, in person. We'll put a timer up on the board for 3 minutes, and you may begin when you are ready.
Hi, this is former trustee Nelson again. Yeah, this matches into an item that I wanted to talk or have in my write-up on the LPAC, because the LPAC one also talks about the MCKV, the homeless families. And particularly it has something that I think could be done as a metric, as a number. It talks about these homeless families being delivered training. To me, you could say, and the number that we got done at mid-year was 50, and that represents 100% of the homeless families that we know in our district. Or even better, it could be the number of times we've, and the number of contacts we made for the teachers represent 100. And that means we've contacted the teachers of these students on an average of twice in the first part of the year. I would really like to see, if you're saying we're making these things, we're making these contacts, there should be some record that the people who are making these contacts of how many contacts they made. There's a number. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I think that the California's school board was asking us to do when we do these mid-years, that we don't say, oh, we're doing it, but actually also say, and here's the number of times we did what we said we were going to do for these homeless families, or contacts to these homeless families, the jobs that the at-risk coordinators are doing, or at-risk supervisors. So when I heard this and this was done in this context, it made me think about that. Is some of these things we can look at it and we can say, oh, we've only contacted a third or a half of the homeless ones in this homeless families in this individual way. Maybe we ought to up our game. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments from trustees? Vice President Chang.
Thank you. Follow up with a question I asked earlier about the ruler. The Yale's coordination between Yale Medical School and the Yale Center for Social Emotional Learning, they run this annual conference that brings together like the top SEL leaders around the country. It's coming up actually pretty soon. I don't know if any board members or any district staff are interested in attending. It's a hybrid conference. So the conference itself is in Connecticut on March 4th through 5th, but the hybrid, listening to the seminars after the fact online, it happens anywhere from after the conference all the way through the summer. So if that's something, I'll send that out to the board, and if the case people want to listen to a workshop, if it's a very low cost. In the summertime, in July 14th to 15th, they run a district leadership social emotional learning conference. And that one is highly subsidized by different foundations to allow school districts to gather leadership to talk about SEL. And that one's in Connecticut, and that's in the summer. I'll send that out to the superintendent. I don't think that one's for board members, but the March one, I've attended in the past. I thought, whether it be a board member or educator, it's highly insightful to see the gathering of the best minds in the country talking about SEL for kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Chang. Are there any other comments from trustees? Director White, thank you so much for your presentation, and Director Jimbo for helping out with our questions, and Director Chang. I personally, I'm still looking forward to the day when we adopt an SEL curriculum district-wide and have a really focused and consistent approach across our schools, while also allowing for the modifications that we need at each site. And I hope that that day will come sooner rather than later. We will now move on to our next item. This is item 7C, Universal Pre-Kindergarten, the 24-25 school year program planning. And we will hear from our Chief Academic Officer, Kathy Bauer.
Good evening again, trustees. So as I share my screen and let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk more about universal pre-kindergarten and options for the upcoming school year. Again, we're aligned to our strategic plan and goal areas 1 and 5. So a little background, universal pre-kindergarten, or as we call it, UPK, includes transitional kindergarten and the California State Preschool Program in our district. We came to you on November 16th with some information about preschool and TK. And based on your direction, we've been investigating options for TK and preschool expansion, the impacts on facilities and budgets for consideration tonight.
Ms. Bauer, your deck isn't up.
Oh. Okay, let's see, why not? I apologize, let me try again. Let's see. I'm getting a message that says screen sharing has failed to start. Try again later.
Okay, I'll try to pull it up.
I could try one more. Let me go out and try one more time. I apologize. There, is it working now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
It is not your fault. Thank you.
Okay, let me go back. So right here, so we're going to talk a little bit about our current contract that we have with preschool. So funding, and I just want to say that preschool funding is a very complex system. We must apply each year for continued funding from the state preschool and from the California Department of Education. And our funding is dependent on a variety of factors, including the number and type of slots that are available through our contract, the number of students we enroll, the number of days students are enrolled, eligibility, family income level, as well as need, if we move to a full day model, the demonstrated need for preschool services. So currently, we're funded for part day, part year preschool. So 3 hours a day, 175 days per year. The maximum reimbursable amount, the MRA, you're going to hear this a lot tonight, that we may earn on our contract is $2,076,000 if we fill our part day slots for the school year. And we can earn up to that $2 million, but we can't earn more than that. And in addition, with enrollment, we're required to enroll a percentage of students with IEPs. Additionally, with enrollment, our funding is dependent in enrolling children as outlined by our contract, part day slots. The minimum age is 3 years old by December 2nd. The maximum age is until they're age eligible for kindergarten. And our enrollment right now is income-based, except for families residing in the Castro neighborhood, students with IEPs, children in protective services, and families experiencing homelessness or current aid recipients. Our Castro neighborhood families qualify for free part day preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Our contract earnings are typically projected by estimating the number of students enrolled each day of the school year. But our program is never fully enrolled on the first day of school. We find that we enroll all the students that we can between March and June, but we have so many students that apply and enroll later in the school year due to becoming age eligible or moving into the area. So we actually lose funding each day for vacancies. So we have to over-enroll students so that we can try to earn our full contract. Right now, we do offer an extended day program for part day preschool eligible families, 8 to 3, but this is at a reduced rate. And we also offer some full fee spaces for families that do not meet income requirements. Right now, we're not earning our full contract, partially due to the large number of extended day spaces. Expenditures for the extended portion of the day are completely separate from CSPP. They're paid by parent fees in the district general fund. And in years past, if we under-earned our contract, like we have been the last few years, this could result in us losing funding or decreasing our maximum reimbursable amount. But because of COVID and the expansion of TK, the state has allowed providers to be held harmless, which means we can continue to earn our full contract through the end of the 24-25 year, and we don't have to worry about enrollment through next year. So for our new contract, we had to apply for our funding by December 1st, and we did request to amend our contract to include part day and full day slots and to continue with part year, 175 days, to mirror our, basically mirror our school schedule. By accepting the full day part year funding, this could reduce the overall number of children we're required to serve within our contract. But it's important to note that we will not receive any additional funding. Our funding will continue to be the $2 million, and we won't be able to charge fees for eligible families that qualify for full day, so it will increase our costs. Enrollment in part day preschool will continue to be income-based, but enrollment in full day preschool slots will be based on income, and now it will also be based on need. So if we move to this move to a full day, families will have to meet income eligibility, which the legislation has changed. So most families would be able to meet that eligibility to attend for free, but they also have to meet the need requirements, which means they have to document their need for actually having their student in full day. So both parents are working, the parents are in school, etc. And so that documentation that they provide determines the number of hours or days a child may be enrolled in full day preschool. So this could be, we could have tons of families that need a full 5 days, but we could also have families that only have documentation that need 2 full days or 3 full days of full day preschool. Opportunities for additional funding. So when we originally created this deck, we were expecting the CDE or the Department of Ed to release a request for funding applications. We have not seen that yet. And Director Kemper and I think based on the budget projections that we may not see an RFA, but we're hopeful. We would be eligible to apply for additional funding, but if we do and we receive it, we would be expected to expand our current program to serve more students. We can't use the funding to offset our current district costs for preschool. And the applications are based on the county's needs assessment, which is issued each year by the local Early Education Planning Council. And unfortunately, right now, that report does not show an increased need for preschool funding in Mountain View. And we're not a priority for funding, and we'd have to compete with districts statewide. So a little bit about enrollment survey data. Director Kemper did survey parents regarding preferences for after-school care. If we could add care from 3 to 5. She collected responses between January and December of last year. 99 parents responded. And you can see that the first line, students interested in after-school care, 3 to 5. That was if it had a fee with it. And the second line was interested if the after-school care was fee. So we had about 29 of the families surveyed that said they would be interested. So let's talk about our current programming. So right now we have 7 classrooms. 4 of them are full day, 8 to 3, and we have 3 part day classes that are 3 hours. We could enroll up to 166 state preschool students, and we've reserved 10 slots that are fee-based for families that don't qualify under income. And our current enrollment, actually right now, I have updated numbers, is 134 students. We have 5 fee-based and 3 staff members, and we still have a number of students with enrollment appointments, and we'll enroll through the end of this month. Our maximum reimbursable amount is that $2,076,000. We're anticipating to earn about $1.7 million. If we were not in a hold harmless year, our enrollment, our anticipated contract earnings would be less because we're not filling all of our slots. We're collecting about $300,000 in fees, and our district contribution from the general fund we're estimating at $348,000-ish for this year. So some pros, it is our current configuration. It allows us to collect some fees to offset the costs. And the combination of full and part day classes allows us to provide services for our special education preschoolers. The con is that preschool families have to pay for half of the full day of preschool, even though it's at a below market rate. We know that there is a need for full day preschool. We don't make our contract earnings for extended day for fee-based spaces because we're only contracted for half day. And we know that salary benefit costs are going to increase, and that will increase costs to our district. And really, one of the biggest things we don't know is the impact of TK on our enrollment as we move through the next 2 years of TK expansion. So here are some options we have for 24-25. Option 1 is to continue with our current situation with 1 addition. So we would continue with 7 classrooms. We'd have 4 full day, not 5, 3 part day, and we'd have 2 classrooms, and we would add some after school care. And we would make a priority for our staff because we know that we have staff that is interested in and needs after-school care. We could potentially enroll 164 students. Our contract stays the same. We anticipate if we added added a free program for our staff, that would cost us about $95,000 a year. We'd have some additional program expenses, some additional staffing costs. We would still receive some revenue from fees, and our contribution would increase to somewhere in the neighborhood of $520,000. If we go this route, we would have to keep our current contract, part day, part year. Some pros and cons is our current classroom configuration. It would use similar staff. Again, allows us to collect fees. It allows us to provide services for our special education preschoolers. And would allow us one more year to assess the impacts of TK on enrollment and or apply or find additional funding. Again, a con, families must pay for half of it. And again, we're going to see salary and benefit costs increase, and the impact of TK is unknown. And we don't know what enrollment's going to look like in preschool next year. So program option 2, again, we use 7 classrooms, but we have 5 full day classrooms, 8 to 3, and 2 part day. We have 164, potentially we can enroll 164, and we think we'd have to enroll a minimum of 128 students to earn our full contract. If we met the enrollment, we could earn our full contract. If let's say we only enrolled 100 students due to TK expansion, we would only earn approximately $1.6 million on our contract. Our staffing costs increase because we have to add staff for full day classes. And so our contribution for this option is going to increase, and we'd probably be somewhere in between $1 million and $1.4 million, depending on how many students we enrolled in our classes. So this adds a full day class. It adjusts our state contract to full and part day. And full day preschool becomes free or very inexpensive for families that qualify. The con is that families have to qualify for full day based on income and need, and we've never done this before. So the income piece will be easy. We're not sure how the need part will work. We're going to have to hire additional staff, and again, impact of TK and salary and benefits costs. And this is program option 3. Again, using our existing classrooms, 7 classrooms, 5 full day, but now we're going to extend the program from 8 to 3 to 8 to 5. And then we'll have 2 part day classrooms where we'll have AM and PM sessions. Potential enrollment is 164 students. Again, we think we'd have to enroll 128 to earn our full contract. But staffing is going to be much more here because we're extending the day till 5 o'clock. So now we're looking at an impact to the budget of somewhere between $1.1 and $1.5 million. So the pros, it extends the full day classes until 5, adds additional full day, it adjusts our contract, and full day preschool becomes free or very inexpensive for families that qualify, allows us to serve our students in our special education preschool. The cons, families must qualify. There's really going to be increased staffing costs here because we're going to have to hire a site supervisor to be on site from 3 to 5. And we're going to have to increase our IAs to 8 hours to cover the extended care from 3 to 5. And to be clear, the preschool program with the teachers is going to be from 8 to 3, and then our instructional assistants are going to run the program from 3 to 5. And we may need more staff depending on how many students qualify for care until 5 p.m. Same other pros and cons, or same other cons about the impact of TK. So here's just a summary of the options of kind of what we're thinking about just for preschool alone. So now I'm going to switch to transitional kindergarten because this is part of UPK. And we do need to run a TK program for all of our 4-year-old children. And this year, children turning 5 between September 2nd and April 2nd are eligible for TK. And then next year that changes to children who turn 5 between September 2nd and June 2nd. And in 25-26, children who turn 4 by September 1 are eligible for TK. And again, there's an option. You can enroll your child in TK or preschool. There's additional requirements for our TK teachers. They have to have early childhood education units in addition to their teaching credential. And looking at ratios, they become, as we get into 25-26, the teacher to student ratio becomes 1 to 10. It's more similar to preschool. And then TK classrooms must contain restrooms that are self-contained or within the classroom or within the TK kindergarten complex, meaning right close by. So this year we expanded to 8 TK classes at 5 sites. We have 2 co-taught classes at MI. And our classes at Mistral and Therakoff, they don't have bathrooms in the classroom. So we added an additional instructional assistant to accommodate the lack of bathrooms. We're anticipating needing to add 3 classrooms this year or for 24-25. So additional 3 teachers, an additional 3 to 6 instructional assistants. And it's hard to know. Right now, enrollment in TK is 161 students, but it's early. We know that parents will continue to enroll. We're already pretty much at the same capacity that we're at now. So I'm proposing that we add the classrooms, 1 to Landals. Currently, Landals only has 2 kindergarten classes. So we would be able to utilize one of those. MI has a room we can use. The bathroom is immediately next door, and Mauna Loma has a room with a bathroom immediately next door. Of course, the spaces at Landals and MI are pending their enrollment. If kindergarten numbers do increase, then we would have to think about relocating the YMCA to other classrooms and use their portables for transitional kindergarten. Just reminding you that TK is unfunded. We pay for everything except for the small amount of money we got by the UPK planning grant. And this is just what we're estimating in terms of costs for TK for 24-25, the impact to our budget somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 2.8 or $2.9 million. So if we look at TK and preschool combined, this just kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about depending on the option we choose and the kind of money that we would have to contribute to make sure that the programs run. And again, these are estimates because for preschool especially, it's based on enrollment. So things to consider, like I mentioned, and preschool is funding is complex. And expenditures are estimated. They could increase depending on the factors like income, enrollment, attendance, and need. And our funding is a set amount, no matter if we offer part day or full day. It's not going to increase unless we apply for and are awarded funding or we receive other local funds. But if we apply for funding, we would have to serve more students, and we would not be able to use that money to offset district costs. And while the state is currently working to increase the rate of reimbursement, there's no, the timing or the increase is unknown at this time. And what we don't know is the demand for part day versus full day preschool. It may change as TK expands and preschoolers are younger. We don't know. And I think what's interesting to note as I got some statistics today is that we currently have 64 3-year-olds enrolled in preschool and 70 4-year-olds. And 9 of those 4-year-olds are TK eligible. And the other 61 have birthdays between April and August. So it's a younger and younger group. Last year, just for comparison, we had 93 4-year-olds in our program. So for TK, again, it's an unfunded mandate. We're not going to understand the full impact until after 25-26 when TK is fully expanded. Our preschool and our TK can compete for the same facilities, rooms with bathrooms. If our enrollment, as it's projected to increase, it may limit our facilities, and I have not identified rooms for TK in 25-26 at this time. Initial enrollment for preschool occurs from March to the end of May. for students to begin on the first day, and then enrollment resumes in September. So we really need to make a decision on the programming and what we're going to be doing next year so that Director Kemper and her team can start enrolling students right at the beginning of March. And no matter what options chosen, there's going to be an impact to our fund, our district general fund. And staffing is challenging. Students are getting younger and younger. Especially our transitional kindergarten is looking more and more like preschool than it did several years ago. So as we're thinking about next year, and I want to say that I don't think that there is a perfect answer right now. There's so many unknowns as we move forward. We know families need care. We know that we're trying to balance facilities and budget. But right now we're recommending option 1. It keeps our potential enrollment at the same level as our current programming, keeps our current staff. It'll provide some free extended care for staff, and additionally extended care for an additional 30 students. It keeps the encroachment on the general fund at a minimum while we assess the impact of TK. And it provides us the possibility of attaining additional funding to cover costs associated with full free day preschool. So tonight, based on our recommendation and all the information provided, we're asking for you to provide us direction on the configuration of the preschool program for 24-25, so staff can begin preparing and they can start enrollment right away in March, because we want to maximize our enrollment. So next steps, we're going to prepare for enrollment. We're going to prepare for TK expansion. We're going to complete our preschool TK curriculum pilot and bring a recommendation to you in May and June. And then we'll consider applying for additional funding if it's available. So at that, I'm going to stop sharing and happy to answer as many questions as I possibly can.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. I see the lights coming on. Trustee Lambert.
Thank you. Yes, it is indeed complicated. Simple question though. You're asking for the board direction on the configuration. Do you mean option 1, 2, or 3?
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Blakely.
I had a question on program option 1 with the total anticipated cost to provide free program to staff for $95,000. Is that just the 3 to 5 p.m. segment, or is that full, the whole thing?
It would be, no, it would, we built in that money to provide them the program the whole day.
The whole day.
For staff, correct.
But that's 10 staff members?
Yeah, and I would have to ask Director Kemper, because she did the calculations for me, because that was really hard.
No, I'm sure. I just, if it's completely free for staff, I would anticipate a lot more demand than that. But I love the idea of being able to offer at least a discount to our staff, but we can talk about that later. This isn't a question, so thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Berman.
So earlier you said, you have to find families that qualify for the state preschool program. And so assessing the income is the easier part, and then the need is a little bit more challenging. So I guess my question is, how do you go about assessing what the need is to determine if they qualify? Since the income part is easy, how do we determine what the need is?
Sure. So it's similar. The families have to provide documentation. So they have to show us. So let's say they're saying, my husband works full time. I go to school 5 days a week. So we would have to have some documentation that shows their school schedule is 5 days a week, and they have documentation that they're working full time, if that makes sense. It's actual paperwork that we have to collect based on regulations from the CE.
Okay. And do we receive any other funding for our preschool program besides the state preschool funds, the MRA?
No, we Our contract is our contract plus any fees we collect currently, which was about 315,000 that we collect from families. That's all we get.
Vice President Chang.
A follow-up question from Trustee Blakely about have we surveyed staff on if there is no cost aftercare for employees, on how many employees would be interested?
We have not yet. That is in the works.
So
I do want to add that during I received a letter, and then about 3 staff members actually stopped me after one of the school visits while we were having lunch and really expressed the need and the desire and communicated that that the lack of aftercare really makes it hard on them, and that while they appreciate the fact that we give them a discounted rate, it is exceptionally hard for them to get from one school over to where the preschools are. And so by having some type of aftercare, it would allow them to be able to do it. And, they expressed that there were several, I think one employee had 3 kids, 2 who were currently in and 1 who was coming up. And she basically sort of wept and said, like, I'm just working to cover preschool cost. So I think there is an interest there, but we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves unless the board wanted us to go in this direction, because we do understand that this is prioritizing some staff members. I think there are currently 9 in preschool. I don't know if it will increase, but we didn't want to say that and start surveying people if the board says, no, we don't want employees to be prioritized, or, there's just too many slots. But I do think there is an interest, and again, it was initiated by letter prior to this conversation.
Thank you. Does that mean that if there was more staff interested, if we're looking at option 1, can it scale to meet all the staff we needed, or is it possible that if more staff wanted than their seats, then there would have to be some lottery? Or
in my conversation with Mrs. Bauer, we really want to try and see what, both from parents as well as from employees, what the interest is. And so we expect it to be a mix of both employees as well as certain target groups. Just realizing that there are some parents, which was born in the survey that Director Kemper pulled, who only want their kids in the half-day program. And so we're just trying to balance it and see what the interest is before we go further on. Obviously, they've ran the numbers and we can do more, but I think there is enough interest to justify at least 1, maybe 2 classes.
Last question. The composition of what staffing is required for aftercare. You mentioned earlier the instructional assistants. So who are the people who have to be, so between 3 to 5, who are the people who need to be on site with the children? Is it all instructional assistants, or is there different levels of people who need to be there?
There's different levels. So we would hire site supervisors. So we would have 2 site supervisors, one at Latham and one at Therakoff. These are people that have lots of experience and currently work in our program, and then they'd be paid extra to oversee the programs at the sites. And then you would have instructional assistants also working with the kids to keep us within ratio.
Is it per pupil cost for that lower than the staffing that's required during the school day?
Yes, because we're paying, the way we estimated it out, we'll pay a stipend to those site supervisors because they already work in our program. So we would pay them a stipend to be the site supervisor, if that makes sense.
So this is a very dense presentation and report. I think we all agree, and I appreciate all of the work that has gone into preparing it. I had some questions about option 1 and also the need requirement that was brought up earlier. Under option 1, it says 2 classrooms with after-school care. So what total number of students would that be for after-school care?
So we could maximize out at 40 students.
Wow.
because you would have 20 in each, 20, it's a full day class, right? So we'd have staff for 40 kids, essentially.
I've definitely heard from parents who might not qualify in terms of income, but both parents are working who are constantly looking for full day childcare. So I'm curious about how we market our preschool program.
I know Director Kemper works directly with Ms. Hausman on marketing our preschool program. They have mailings, we have a website, and Director Kemper, you are free to jump on and answer that question because I don't have all of the details.
I would also ask, I know like even Eli saw a sign, and then even on El Camino, I think we put up a banner that goes across the street. So we do try to put as much information out. I just for full disclosure, I know one trustee just this week suggested that we also reach out to Google, who's closing. And I think there's, we're constantly sending information out, but if there are other ways to reach parents who we may not be reaching, I think we're more than welcome to entertain how to get out to those parents.
Yeah, I think it wasn't a trustee. It was a one of the PTA presidents at the
yes,
MVLA PTA council meeting who suggested that. It was a Los Santos PTA president too.
It was,
And
yes.
she said, why don't you go to find some way to contact the Google families who are losing their preschool and see if they want to join our program. Is in an ideal world to give as many students access who have financial need while also offsetting our costs by bringing in families who can pay. What would be your ideal mix for that? I know that's a huge question, but
Well, I think if you
both.
Yeah, I think if you look at our slides, if we want to, we really have to, what we figured out is we have to enroll 128 state preschool students. As long as we meet that number, which it's a little convoluted because it has to do with days enrolled and when they start and all of that. We can then additionally offer fee-based slots from there up to what our capacity is.
Okay.
So our capacity is 164. We really need to have at least 128 state preschool students, and then we could be more flexible with the other slots that we have.
Even if we carve off 10 of those slots for staff?
Yes, because we'd still be within our 106, what our maximum capacity would be is like 164. You have 10 for staff, that's 154, right? So you still have some room, some wiggle room in there.
Okay. And then under options 2 and 3 with the needs assessment, are we allowed to accept fee-based families who don't qualify under those options as well?
That's a question for Director Kemper. I don't know that answer to that.
I couldn't tell from the documents.
So Director Kemper, can you unmute?
Yes, I'm sorry. Could you please restate the question?
Yes, under options 2 and 3, where families have to qualify by income and need, could we also still offer unfilled spots to families who qualify for neither and then pay a fee?
Yes, we could.
Okay.
And the only challenge anytime that we offer spaces to families that don't qualify for preschool is balancing out facility space and making sure that we meet that as Kathy Bauer said, the enrollment requirement to meet our contract.
Okay. Okay. And then, under the needs requirement, I get the sense that the need is about whether or not there's a caretaker present at home during the day. Are there any anywhere under that needs requirement where a child being an English language learner, or a child being from a family where no one has graduated high school or no one has attended college, or do any of those categories qualify? I understand McKinney-Vento students might.
Right now, as it stands for the need part of the requirement, it's basically parents are either employed or seeking employment or in school or some sort of training program, that type of thing. Need does not cover the categories that you mentioned.
Okay, I think that's really challenging because a part of our goals, or at least part of my goal in making sure that we maintain a preschool program, is not just meeting the actual need in terms of who doesn't have childcare at home during the day and needs it, but also in giving a head start to our families whose students might not, as they age, be performing as well in our school district, to get them early and to give them really high quality preschool. So it's disappointing that that the need doesn't include any of those other categories. Trustee Blakely.
2 more brief questions. One, can you remind me again what the minimum amount is required for the contract? Was it 124 or 128?
128.
128, thank you.
And that 128 would be in a perfect world if we had 128 state preschool students enrolled from day 1 through the end of the school year.
Right. Got it. Thank you. The one other question that I had is all of these options are only during the school year. They would not cover the summer. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have not applied for an extended school year, full year.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions from trustees, we'll take public comment on this item. If you are a member of the public and you would like to comment on this discussion of preschool options, you can raise your hand in Zoom. You can also press *9 on your phone if you're on a phone in Zoom. Or you can submit a yellow speaker card and approach the podium here in person. I'm going to wait just a little bit. I know I saw some people joining, and I wanted to give them an opportunity to raise their hand in Zoom if they would like to speak. All right, at this time, I have 2 speakers online, and I have 1 speaker in person. So each speaker will have 3 minutes. We're going to get a timer up on the board. We're going to start with our in-person speaker first. Then we will go to Liliana, and then we will go to Blake. So we'll start with our in-person speaker first.
Thank you. This is Stephen Nelson again. Let me go back 50 years. Let me pretend I'm still worrying about the poor, the families I dealt with extensively in West Africa. Will staff-free spaces bump out the poor? I think that's a question you ought to think hard about before you decide which option. Will staff, and that's actually, I think, the most important question you ought to be asking yourself, because it's going to cost money. Are those free spaces going to be for the poor, or they're going to be for staff? Will staff-free care be on their federal and state income reporting? And is reduced cost care now reported as a benefit that's worth money? Or, I don't know, maybe the requirements are employee-paid childcare expenses are not considered as income and not reportable as income. I don't know what it is now for those people who are on the staff who obviously are not SED. Well, I can't say obviously, who probably are not SED. So those are 2 questions I ask. The poor usually can't be here because they're too busy with their families. They may have second jobs. They may be making minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to our online speakers. We have a 3-minute timer up. Liliana, you may unmute yourself when you're ready, and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Liliana Camacho. I'm a mom with 4 kids in Mountain View, and I'm also with Parent Voice Santa Clara. And I just want to let you guys know that this week would be it's going to be my daughter's last week with the Mountain View Wishman's preschool due to the fact that she's only able to get 3 hours since I'm not able to pay for the full time, right? And I just want you guys to think about all the families that we need care from like 8 to 5, even later. And in that ask is to also think of just like how much having the opportunity to send our kids full-time to preschool, they would actually be getting early education early on, and it will definitely help them not stay so behind. Like right now with many of our kids that are behind is because they didn't have access to early education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Blake, there is a 3-minute timer up. You may unmute yourself when you're ready to begin.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, first of all, I do just want to appreciate the Mountain View Wispan School District for even having this conversation. It would have been really easy for y'all to say, it's too hard for us to do full day preschool, TK's on the way, we're all good. And so the fact that the district is exploring every possible avenue to do its part to expand full day childcare in Mountain View is really commendable. The fact is part-day preschool does not meet the needs of the vast majority of families, and we know this from hearing from hundreds of families across the state year after year. And I should mention too, I'm the organizing director for Parent Voices. I do want to address the need part of the equation. As was mentioned, the full-day contract will allow the district to enroll families who are employed, who are in school or in a vocational training program, who have an incapacity, and who are seeking employment. And families who do meet the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness and families with active CPS cases are given priority to enroll. Families are ranked by their income, and families with a lower income will get enrolled first. So that it's not first come, first serve. Families are ranked by their income and enrolled based on their income. I used to work at a Title V preschool agency. We served over 1,000 kids, and we never had trouble filling those slots. Need was never an issue. Even if a family does not have a job, you're able to give them full-time up to 29.5 hours a week for seeking employment, and that eligibility will allow them to qualify for 12 months of care while they're seeking employment. We know there's over 2 million families who are eligible for subsidized childcare in California, and less than 250,000 of them are receiving care. And the city of Mountain View does not have a single preschool that operates full-day subsidized childcare. You would be the first. Second of all, it's really hard to properly assess the demand for TK versus preschool in the absence of a full-day, no-cost preschool program. If parents of 4-year-olds in a high-cost city are forced to choose between free 3-hour preschool, costly full-day preschool, or free TK, that's really no choice at all. And I apologize, I came in a little bit late to the meeting. I couldn't hear the details on all the options. But on behalf of our parent members in Mountain View and in Santa Clara County, I do urge the district to pursue the option that provides the maximum amount of full-day preschool slots. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had one more hand go up, and at least 2 of our previous speakers did not actually use all of their time. So we're still within our 10-minute limit. I'd like to allow that speaker to address the board. Paula, if you would like to unmute, you have 3 minutes to address the board. And I should have stated this at the beginning, but anyone who is a speaker who may be a Spanish speaker can also speak in Spanish, and it will be translated for the board.
Hola, ¿sí me escuchan?
Yes, thank you.
Buenas noches, respetable mesa miembros de la mesa directiva. Muchas gracias por estar tomando este tema en conversación. Es muy importante para nosotras, las familias de clase trabajadora de Mountain View, tener la oportunidad de contar con un preescolar para nuestros niños pequeños. Como siempre he dicho que la educación temprana es muy importante, ya que es la base o los cimientos para la educación de nuestros hijos. En mi experiencia, tengo 4 hijos y los 4 han tenido la oportunidad de asistir al preescolar, pero solo tiempo parcial, 3 horas cada día, y lo cual he realizado que no es suficiente tiempo para que ellos aprendan lo suficiente como para llegar preparados al kinder. Entonces, basado en mi experiencia, les pido que consideren extender el tiempo del preescolar para los estudiantes, ya que muchas familias a veces tienen 2 trabajos y no les permite tener a sus hijos en un lugar seguro donde los niños están desarrollando su educación, y además de eso, los sueldos que tienen estas familias no son suficientes como para pagar un cuidado de calidad para sus hijos. Entonces, es muy importante que las familias tengan este acceso a la educación temprana de sus hijos, porque eso es lo que hará un cambio grande en el futuro. Si queremos niños que lleguen preparados al pre-kinder y niños preparados que lleguen al kinder y sucesivamente en sus siguientes años escolares, tenemos que empezar desde la educación temprana. Es muy importante para todas las familias tener esa ventaja, y sabemos que es difícil, pero si todos trabajamos juntos, creo que lo podemos lograr. Y una vez más, gracias por tomar cartas en este asunto, y esperamos que con toda la sabiduría que ustedes tienen y capacidad de poder navegar y realizar los cambios que sean lo mejor para la comunidad de Mountain View, y confiamos en el criterio de ustedes y su conocimiento, y confiamos en que vamos a tener esa oportunidad para las familias y los estudiantes. Muchas gracias.
Paula, muchas gracias por su tiempo. All right, trustees. We will move on to comments from trustees. Vice President Chang.
Thank you. Yeah, this item, I feel like this item reminds me of like when the previous board had a rare opportunity to make the decision on teacher housing, and that decision here at Mountain View ended up having a ripple effect to influence policy across the whole country. I mean, perhaps even outside the country. I don't know, but I know that what we decided here locally on that actually really impacted national policy. And you know, hear this idea, and we hear all these speakers talk about the need for preschool, and just the like. I know a lot of us when our kids were younger, we wondered like why is our country not like Finland or Norway, or countries that like really take care of kids. And like here we are up here, actually have a chance to kind of have an impact on that scale. So like I really do encourage us to like take advantage of the fact that this is one of those few moments that we have that we can shape a policy to kind of be the society and government we want locally, and have that ripple onto like national policy perhaps in the future. I do, you know, the district recommendation on option 1, that is my initial support for that, with the hope that the board, perhaps in our upcoming parcel tax, pushes with this goal of bringing it to the community and selling it to the community, of us in Mountain View, with the community on board, articulating a goal to go to the maximum extent possible in providing early childcare services and early education services. But I think that's something the community should be part of. So my support's option 1, with the, you know, hope that we can then go as far as possible and try to sell the community on it and be a leader in that, as we were with teacher housing. Thank you.
Trustee Lambert and then Trustee Blakely.
So emotionally, I would love to expand as much as possible now and offer all of these programs. I think as was pointed out, there's financial constraints right now. There are facilities constraints. There is a lot of unknown. Oh, there's constraints about getting teachers, staffing, and there's a lot of uncertainty about enrollment and this. But as speakers pointed out, and I think it's very clear, there's a huge need for childcare, for preschool, for TK, and it would be great if we could provide it, as part of our educational services. It's only going to enable us as Mountain View Wisdom School District to serve our role as educating kids better. However, I would, defer to the staff's recommendation to go with option one. But I do believe that as Google is pulling out of its facilities that we've leased to them, that a lot of these issues will get a lot easier. I mean, it's my vision to have childcare, pre-K and TK all in one site. That would reduce, the cost to our district, make things so much easier, all the way around, and the transportation and things like this. So, consistent with what Trustee Chang was saying, I think my vision is to really expand the program considerably, use the opportunity of having the Wisdom sites and other sites in the school district become available in the coming years to meet those needs. And right now, we're just we're taking it slowly till we get there, and that's the time to address all of these issues really well. And also slowly, work to figure out how we're going to meet the $3 million needs right now, which by the time we do this, we guarantee we're talking about $6 or $10 million, right? So that's a long-term process. But it's good the community knows that so that we can all work toward that goal. So thank you.
If I may jump in, Trustee Blakely, I think one of the things that is challenging about this is we know anecdotally that there's need, but we don't have a test case. We haven't proven that if we expanded to full day, that we would be able to fill more slots than we're filling right now because we have empty slots. And so I see this as an opportunity for proof of concept, that we test it with something like option 2, not necessarily option 3, but it's still a slow pace, but we ease into these waters and test it this year, and see what our enrollment looks like. And that lends itself to be a very strong argument for our parcel tax. Or, our city passed a resolution, our city council, in support of preschool programs. And it's hard to argue that there's any better preschool program than a high quality, free, full day program provided for families by the school district. And so maybe our city partners can also participate in helping to provide grants or helping us with facilities or something like that around preschool. I know they've been looking at building preschool classrooms within new housing developments. There's one over on Villa that there's a preschool, a childcare planned within the facility itself as the community benefit. And so maybe there's an opportunity there as we struggle with facilities needs, but I think we have to prove it. And I think this might be our opportunity to prove it with option 2. Trustee Blakely.
Thank you. I concur with what all of you are saying that, and I think lot 12, I'm not sure if that has changed, but the housing plan for the affordable housing for lot 12, at least at one point, had a preschool built in, and they talked about the proximity to the library for that. So the So thank you for all the work. I know that it was kind of mind-boggling a little bit reading this report and trying to separate out the strands. And I know a lot of work went into it. My sense is that there is a great need for the full day program, but as President Conley points out, we do have the proof of concept thing. And as trustees Lambert and Chang said, I could definitely go with option one while we're in this kind of testing period, especially with the TK piece where we don't know what the enrollment's going to be. The thing I really wanted to comment on though is I had one of our teaching staff whom I've known for years since she was enrolled in our schools, had reached out and contacted me and said, please, 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 can we have all day child care? That would be so incredibly helpful for staff. And at her site, which was one of the elementary sites, she said there were 10 staff members who were looking for that. So my sense is there's going to be a great demand, especially at a lot of our sites. We have newer teachers that are younger. And so they're the ones, the 45-year-olds aren't having babies as their kids are already in grade school. And I think we probably should do some pooling. We'll need to plan it for staff. But on the other hand, with the teaching shortages, and we know like we've been doing much better with the teacher retention, and we've got the teacher housing is a component of that. But I feel like this would be another extra strong support for we really care about our staff, as we all do, and want to invest in them and to retain them. And I think that would just be a huge draw for getting really good, competent teachers and retaining the ones that we have. There are so many, one that I happen to know very well, who is not working right now, who left our school she's with her 20-month-old. And if there were full day daycare, I wouldn't be surprised if she would come back. So I'm really excited about looking into this, but I think we do need to test it more and survey the staff. And, frankly, for staff, I love the free childcare, but, I could be comfortable with, the discounted rate or something if there were a way to still make it very reasonable. It's so expensive, and especially once you have 2 kids paying double. And then a lot of our staff, as we know, don't live in the direct neighborhood. So they might have to commute across the bay or down to Morgan Hill or, up in Boulder Creek or something like that. And so for them, having their kids near them, to get home, even having the kids makes them a carpool to help their commute. And it makes it easier for them to just finish up their work day and then get the kids home if we have all day preschool. So thank you for looking into all this. And I can support option one for this year, but I would like to investigate other alternatives, whether there's more demand and whether that would make sense. And I totally agree with what Trustee Chang said in terms of perhaps some community resources in the form of parcel tax or other kinds of funding. Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
So I think it was the caller Blake who spoke about the universal TK, sort of the pre-kindergarten grade coming. And for our district, it's here. And I know that there are districts out there who are really stalling to introduce that. And I'm just, really proud of our district for stretching itself to begin to accommodate the demand for that earlier grade within our school system. And as a board, we have signaled that preschool is also very, very important, and it's something we'd like to see and even expand upon. So I think all of us unanimously agree on that. And I will just echo what my fellow trustees have said. I think we have a little bit of work to do in terms of assessing what the real need is, what the demand is going to be. And I think more importantly, we have to really figure out our facilities, because I would hate to overpromise and then disappoint families when we don't have the facilities that we hope for our preschool sites and for our pre-kindergartners, honestly, since that's an issue that a lot of districts are facing, is that we know that these children are competing for the same space. And so we have to think about how we're going to accommodate it. And then we have that our preschool, I want to make sure it is sort of state of the art for our community. I want to make sure we deliver a spectacular program that others can sort of look to as a model for how a school district can wrap around its community starting at a very young age. So I feel like, I'm definitely interested in option 2. However, I feel like at this point, I think the responsible thing to do at this time is to maybe try to stick with the option 1, but work towards that option 2, because I do want us to see us expanding and meeting the full-time need that I know exists in our community.
All right, well, it sounds like, is it okay if I comment and then I'm happy to swing back around? It sounds like there's a clear board majority for option 1. If that's not true, I guess give me a thumbs up. No, okay. It sounds like there's a clear board majority for option 1. I will say, I was teaching when I had my first child, and part of my decision to leave the classroom after having my first child was that almost half of my income was going to pay for preschool or childcare for that child. And for someone who loves working with children, to have to give up every single day during the week with my child in order to only be able to bring home half of my salary because the rest of it was going to putting them into daycare was heartbreaking. And at that time, we were hoping to have another child pretty soon afterwards, and 2 children would have negated my salary anyway. So what was the point? But I've heard from, even families here who have 2 incomes who might be working in the tech sector that even then, especially with the cost of new housing, so let's say somebody has a mortgage on a $2 million house. I mean, that's an incredibly privileged position to be in to qualify for a mortgage on that. But it can be very expensive beyond that to actually pay for childcare as well. It's a problem that I think is pretty common across all of our income ranges within our community, that childcare is a challenge. And I think it holds women back. I think it holds us back as a society that we don't have a better safety net and supports for parents and for young children. So I am very much in favor of anything we can do to provide more full day options, reflecting even more through the conversation. Now I'm a hard option 3 person, but I'd like to have the 8 to 5 for everyone who qualifies, and then also fee available slots. But it sounds like that might be the direction we're heading, but we're not there yet. Are there further comments from trustees? Trustee Lambert and then Vice President.
Just want to sort of rephrase or emphasize something I think we've all been talking about, is that, childcare is just, fundamental community need. It's like infrastructure, right? And we all should have that. And having the school district sort of take the initiative on this, like you said, Trustee Conley, there's opportunities to work with the city. There should be opportunities to work with our businesses, all sorts of organizations, within the Bay Area and beyond, to help get funding to pull this off in a real serious way. And that's what I'd be looking to do is just, sort of solve it in Mountain View and have just a really, really good, birth to kindergarten into our system, and have this so it works for everybody.
Vice President Chang and then Trustee Berman.
Thank you. I just wanted to support what was said earlier about the Google Preschool as a puzzle piece in the future to play into this. I think that was a really, I think in the future that's going to be a really good idea as we look in the long term about having a really strong single site potentially, in addition to the others, but like that being an additional resource. I also hope that wanted to echo that it's not necessarily a trade-off of for providing teachers and staff a chance to get free after-school care. It's not necessarily a trade-off of choosing employees versus kids, because retaining the best teachers possible is the very best thing we can do for the kids at our school district. There's nothing we can do more to change their lives than give them the best staff and teachers possible. And the best teachers and staff retention in this area. I think a lot of us agree with that. And I hope that if there ends up being so much staff demand that the district is put in a position that they are having to turn people away, I hope they bring this back to the board or find resources for that, because I don't think we should turn teachers away. If there's actually, that ends up being, as we're testing all these things to figure out where demand is on any level, if there's a lot of teacher demand on that level, I think our staff demand, I think we should meet it, because for all the reasons that President Conley said about like retention, and that should be the way to go. Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Well, something I just wanted to emphasize that I think we're all extremely supportive of expanding, this opportunity to families with young children, I think as quickly as we can. And I'm also really cognizant of, that the transitional kindergarten, that we're growing, and I'm excited to make sure that we're moving our 4-year-olds, that age keeps shifting down, so we won't see the full extent of that program until, is it 25, 26? Is that the right school year? So I think, I don't know, I'm excited about the conversation we're having. I'm glad that everyone's really thrilled to make sure that we provide daycare for our teachers, because, that's going to be really instrumental, I think, for some teachers that are looking for districts to work at and to stay in. I think that will be really key, along with our teacher housing and all the great other benefits that we're offering. And the sooner we can get there, the better. But I know sometimes things have to move slowly so that we do things really well.
Trustee Lambert.
No quick comment.
No?
It's fine. I appreciate the need for teachers, retain teachers, and to help them out. But I also want to emphasize, I see good childcare and preschool programs as just an excellent opportunity to break the cycle of poverty that many, many of our residents and our students and their families are trapped in. That this is the one way I see we can really help make a difference there. And I don't want that to get lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, we've looked at things in Mountain View, like a universal basic income, right? This is very much the equivalent, if not more so, in terms of the amount of compensation that childcare provide. Like childcare, it is more expensive than the current amount of universal basic income proposed, right? So it could have a huge impact on families, and it's a win-win-win for the city, for us, for the county government, for the state. So figuring out how to rally people behind this shared vision of what we could be doing as a district, I think is really important. I also agree with the conversation that's been had around, I'd like to keep preschool and TK at the sites where we have it and expand it where we can, but also we have the Woods, the preschool location at Therkoff, yes, that is a Google site, as well as the Slater location, which is a preschool. And we even have a site that we lease out that over at Cooper Park, that down the road, maybe we want to look at as well when we talk about facilities needs. Not yet. I know I don't want to throw that contract out with the bathwater. They've been doing great improvements and they're doing a good job. So we don't have to provide all the preschool ourselves. But I think that opportunity down the road to expand our preschool programming and TK programming is great. If we were a district that provided childcare as well as housing, I think it would be hard for people to lure anyone away from us. I think we would be able to attract and retain some really great talent. And yes, Vice President Chang.
Actually, a question, I don't know if this might be for Ms. Bauer or the superintendent. Instructional assistants, would they be eligible if we did do free daycare? Would they be eligible for that for their own children?
Yes, they would. In fact, some of the people who spoke to me are actually IAs within the district. And technically, they probably qualify under the income thresholds that were referenced earlier.
Would a school bus driver qualify? Because we need those too.
Yes.
Maybe a science coach.
Yep. It would be as many employees as we could squeeze. I do have one question, just so I think we understand the direction. The only thing that I have a question mark about is for employees, would you like it to be they pay for part of it, or because in the current iteration, I think we're bearing the whole cost. So for employees or individuals who are above the income threshold, that it would be a reduced fee for them, or is the expectation that if it's an employee, we would cover the costs?
I'll just ask it as a straight out. Would you like to fully pay for the employee benefit? Thumbs up or thumbs down? So we have a yes from Vice President Chang, a no from Trustee Lambert.
I wonder if we can consider like a sliding scale potentially? Like
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
reduce,
this is up to y'all. We can come back and we can tell you.
because there's definitely a pay, just, pay scale, right? When
Right.
I think of roles
Director
in our
Kemper
district.
created a sliding scale previously. I'm sure we can use something similar for the aftercare. And then we can set up a process in order to.
Yeah, I
do
guess
that.
I'd like to take a look at that before so that I understand what that would look like before officially deciding.
Trustee Blakely.
I'd like to look at it too. I mean, ideally, if we could offer it for free, that would be amazing, but I don't know what the cost would be to the district. And the sliding scale could work well, but it sounds like some of the staff would qualify anyway for the free.
Yeah.
So, obviously if they qualify independently just because they're staff, I mean, they shouldn't have to pay.
So I'm in agreement with Trustee Berman and Trustee Blakely. So there's a majority there, but Vice President Chang.
I see the majority, but I would say, if the numbers come back on like what the cost is, and if it's not really like generating so much revenue that it's actually, if we're nickel and diming the teachers, there's a psychological difference when it comes to compensation retention between a free benefit and a paid service. So like I receive where I teach, I receive free after school care. I have for my daughter there for as long as she's been there, and I can tell you as a teacher, it makes a big difference on why I teach there. And if it was even a small amount, it wouldn't feel the same, I guess. But.
All right, so it sounds like we'd like to review a sliding scale and also kind of what the interest is from staff.
Yeah, we'll do a couple of things. We know that you are aspiring to option 3, which is the maximum amount of full day classrooms that go until 5 o'clock. So we will, as we do the enrollment, we'll try to gauge the interest to see where that is. And then we also will work on a sliding scale for families that are above the income threshold. I don't know how much of a difference it'll take. I mean, we obviously know that right now we're estimating our district contribution to be 516 under option 1, and then that can increase by $1 million for option 2. So we'll bring all that information back along with some other possible changes to the program that address some of the comments that have been raised too.
So I have one comment and one question before we close out. The comment is, I think there's an opportunity here too for this kind of synergistic pipeline around some of our staffing areas. So can someone qualify, if we eventually get to the option 3 where we have a full day state funded slots open, could someone who qualifies for that be pursuing, with some support and coaching from the district, pursuing education credits that allows them to be an IA, or that allows them to become a preschool teacher, or, even down the line allows them to become an actual classroom teacher or staff or bus driver. I'm going to keep coming back to that bus driver unicorn that we need. So I think there's also a pipeline opportunity here, especially if we focus on that in the messaging as the district and try to actually tap parents who are in the program to consider, if they're pursuing education, to consider pursuing eventual employment with us. And then my question is, at what point do we need to take a final vote on this or final decision so that we can meet the planning time and the ramp up that Director Kemper and Chief Academic Officer Bauer need?
So and Ms. Bauer may have more thoughts. So at least from my working process, this was the first step to sort of determine where you wanted to go. From there, there's a series of things we need to do from facilities all the way down. And then we're also looking at curriculum and some other items. So we will start sort of advertising what this looks like now, because that enrollment for preschool was actually just about, it's a couple weeks off. So once we get that ball rolling, we've already done the contract. So we did our due diligence there. Ms. Bauer, Ms. Kemper have already done it. If we do decide to try and consolidate sites, we need to look at just making sure that we can get sites up and running, which means that they have to be certified or clear the process. So there's a couple steps that are pending, but this was the most important step, which is just making sure that we were meeting the board's direction in terms of achieving the goal for preschool. And I think we sort of understand where you are comfortable with for right now and where you want to aspire. And that gives us some work that we have to do to bring back. So in my mind, we probably will bring something back probably around the budget time because there will be some budget implications that we'll just need to take into account. And we can bring back at the exact time as we're talking about the budget. This is what we're expecting the contribution to be to preschool based off of interest and some other items.
And just to clarify around I don't know if the discussion was consolidating sites or if it was maintaining preschool at existing sites while also expanding preschool at the eventual Google sites. I'm not sure where we landed. Did we?
I think.
Were you looking for direction there?
I think we will come back. I think there's a unique opportunity that's in front of us right now, so that as we could talk about what this will look like, that we may be able to capitalize on one of the two sites, as opposed to allowing it to sit vacant. But we really, want to do our due diligence and sort of look at what's the process that we need to undertake. But I think if, what was clear when we brought this back and what Ms. Bauer, Ms. Kemper, and I all walked away with is that there's a strong desire from the board to make sure that we have preschool that provides essentially daycare. We also heard in our study session that we need to be mindful that the facilities are not always as adequate as they need to be, and that TK and preschool really have distinct needs. And I think Ms. Kemper has been talking about that for quite some time. And so I think what we're trying to do is, I'm not trying to say we're taking advantage of a crisis, but I think there's just this unique convergence of events that may allow us to address some of these additional needs, make sure we have adequate facilities for preschoolers. And I'm not talking about, I don't know if we have enough demand for the Slater site. I think there's a way that we can probably check off a couple of these boxes with an expansion, full day, address some parking issues that have come up during the cafecito. I think there's a lot. So if you can give us a little time, probably sometime around May, I think we'll have better answers for you. And in full disclosure, and I've said this to a couple of trustees, there's also a conversation that needs to happen about if the site moved, would people go to that particular site and what is the item? Now, it doesn't mean that we're trying to move next year, but I do think within the next year or two, we can address some facilities issues and we can address the possibility of some consolidation issues that we have so that we don't have TK competing with preschool, and that we're faced with the decision we had earlier, which was which one is more valuable to you. And I think the board has spoken pretty clear that both are valuable and we need to address both needs, knowing that we don't have enough Measure G funds left to solely focus in on bathrooms. So I think just based off of all the series of conversations we've had over the last couple of months, there's a couple ideas that are floating. Just if you can give us
some time,
a couple months, I guarantee I'll bring something back. And then you can tell me yes, no, and throw it out.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rudolph. Trustee Blakely.
Just one more comment on that vein. I know you need some time to figure it out and totally get that. But if at all possible, I would really like to see a program continue in the Castro Mistral neighborhood because of transportation access. So whether, the primary program was consolidated elsewhere, I think it would be really helpful to at least keep some spots there. But TBD.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Chief Academic Officer Bauer and Director Kemper for staying with us. We will now take a bio break. Let's come back at, I'm going to say 8:48. All right, at 8:49, the board is back from our short break. We are going to be on item 7, review and discussion. D, transportation field trip process and discussion, with a presentation from our Chief Business Officer, Dr. Rebecca Westover.
Good evening, trustees. Tonight, I also have the Director of Maintenance, Operation, and Transportation with me, Brian Perrone. So if there's any questions, he'll also be happy to answer them.
Dr. Westover, just real quick, and I don't know if Principal Taylor is here, but we just wanted to say happy birthday to both of you, Mr. Taylor, as well as yourself. I know right before COVID, we were fortunate enough to all sing happy birthday to you, and we haven't had a meeting on your collective birthday since. We won't do it today, but I think you and Vern are the rare two people that have, since I've been here, have had your birthday on an actual board meeting or some other day. But happy birthday to the two of y'all.
Thank you. All right. Tonight's presentation is from the request of the board asking to know more about our field trip and busing process. In connection with our strategic plan, we always want to make sure that we have an equitable distribution of resources that support student success and ensure that our facilities and resources equitably serve all students. So a little bit about our field trip process. I'm not going to read this out to you, but when a site requests a field trip, they fill out a Google form that includes information like their destination, number of students, as well as how many adults will be attending. For our bus capacity, we currently have 5 drivers with 1 open position. We have a big bus accommodates 78 to 82 kids, and a short bus has variable seating based on the number of wheelchairs it can accommodate. So it can accommodate between 14 and 38 students. We own 4 big buses and 6 short buses. The district has the capacity to take a child on a field trip sorry, let me back up. We have the capacity to take every child on a field trip with, I'm having trouble reading my sentence. The district has the capacity to take every child on a field trip during the school year. So during regular days, pickup would be between 8:45 and 9 a.m. with a return by 2, and a minimum day would be a pickup from 8:45 to 9 a.m. with a return by 12 o'clock. The reason we have these restraints is because of our regular routes for pickup and drop off for students. So our current limitations, trips that are farther away, such as San Francisco, are difficult to accommodate due to our normal bus routes. Again, this is pickup and drop off for our school students. We have the option to pay overtime and have students picked up after hours. So if a teacher wanted to go to San Francisco and didn't mind returning late to campus, that would also be an option. So a bus driver would do their normal afternoon route and then go up to San Francisco to pick up the kids and then drop the kids off late. Preferred times are also not always available due to our morning and afternoon routes. We have had some scheduling issues in the past. It's not always been clear to teachers about the time of the day that busing is available. So teachers and front office staff would stop requesting trips because they didn't know the available times. So far this year, there have been 162 trips requested and 108 will be fulfilled. 54 trips were completed, 54 trips are scheduled for the remainder of the year, and 54 trips have been declined due to multiple reasons, including drivers not being available or short-staffed, field trip times during the incorrect time during route times, the date was already booked, or weather and road blockages. One thing that we've had happen this year is because we had a bus driver resign mid-year, we had to redo our routes. When we redid our routes, it required that we would have 1 less driver available for field trips. So for the remainder of the year, we actually had to cancel some of the field trips that had been previously booked because we had a driver resign. So that position was posted, and we actually currently have an offer out, and we're waiting to see if the driver will accept. This is a little bit about who utilizes our buses. So by school site, how many trips that will be taken, as well as how many sports events were covered for Crittenden and Graham. We also use outside vendors if we can't use our internal busing. This is an example of the costs of outside vendors or taking charters. And then giving the board a little bit of idea of how field trips are paid for. So this information was gathered from a PTA president's meeting. So the different school sites set different amounts aside per student. And then we also wanted to look at how our schools are funded. So a note went out to the districts or to district CBOs in the county asking how much they give to each school site per student. You can see from the variation, it ranges from $44 per student at the elementary level. And then actually at the high end is MVWSD. At Castro, we average $271.98 per student at Castro. This is an average. We give $100 per student as a base, and then an additional $200 for each student that is unduplicated. In my original presentation, I had an abbreviation that said UPP, which is unduplicated pupil percentage. It should have read UPC, unduplicated pupil count. So the UPC is allocated according to the October CBED number. So in October, we take an official count of how many students would qualify as UPC. So this is students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, EL, and foster youth. The district believes that these schools should have more resources available to them. So you see it in our regular budget allocation, and you also see it in the allocation that goes out to our school sites. So a student that is a UPC would be allocated $100 for the general allocation for the school, as well as an additional $200 because they fall into one of those categories. Looking at our middle schools, Graham, for example, receives an average of $313.42 per student. So really just illustrating that our school sites get allocated a larger amount than many schools in the county. And then I guess I should also add that it is up to the school site how they would like to spend these funds. So sites have the ability to prioritize field trips and bring on-site experiences. So some sites, in addition to taking field trips, have also brought, I guess, the field trips to the school site. So San Francisco Opera Guild, authors visits, planetarium visits, motivational speakers, the NVLA dance team, as well as folkloric dance. So some possible adjustments that we can make. During the first 2 weeks of school, all sites can submit requests. This is to help us help us plan so we can offer one trip for every child in the district. Oftentimes what happens is during the year, requests come in and we're double or triple booked for the same day. So by trying to collect all of the requests in the beginning of the year, we can try to accommodate every single student across the district. Once all requests are fulfilled, transportation will allow second field trips to be requested. Castro's requested dates will also be given a priority in an effort to improve Castro's access to our buses. Sites will need to coordinate grade level trips to ensure that resources are utilized efficiently. And then we had some questions for the board when it comes to field trips. Would the board like to see scheduling of buses prioritized differently than proposed, or what changes would the board request? And then, of course, if there are any other questions.
Thank you, Dr. Westover. I had a question right off the bat. You know, I've been on the side of this as a parent volunteer, as a PTA member, and then also as a teacher in the district. I've experienced field trips in many ways. And one of the recommendations here was having everyone sign up for their field trips within the first 2 weeks of school. I can't even imagine that being possible for most teachers and parents. Most of the field trips are coordinated by parent volunteers, and the teachers don't even onboard kind of their room parents and parent volunteers until after the first few weeks of school when everyone is settling in. Is it possible to extend that date? No one's taking field trips within the first month or two anyways. Could we extend that deadline?
Yes, we could.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from trustees?
I was just going to ask a similar question, so.
Vice President Chang.
Thank you. On the report, when it said that, like, there was on one slide the average cost for like a local field trip, $259 to San Francisco, $490. Could you give some background about since those are buses we own and staff that we hire already, why is there an additional, what's the rationale for the additional expense when a school site uses one of our district buses and bus drivers?
Yeah, some of it is just how we account for the cost and of the bus. So for example, from the state, for home to school transportation, we code it in a particular way. So we get reimbursed from the state for some of the cost. When we do field trips, the field trips aren't reimbursed from the state in the same way. So really we could, if the board would like, not charge the school sites for the trips, but I think this is a way that we keep our transportation department running the same way we do transfers within the district when we do food service. So if a school wants to cater for their school site for lunch, we would do a transfer of funds between the school site and child nutrition. But really what we're charging is just the cost for that actual trip it's a mileage cost.
So it's gas and maintenance,
So
not staffing costs.
So that range of 259 for like a trip to Palo Alto and 490 to San Francisco, is that just the gas and miles when it's on that slide? That 259 to 4?
I'll Director Perrone to talk a little bit more about the specifics, but it is the mileage rate that's multiplied by a particular.
That's the mileage rate then, right?
No, period.
Good evening, trustees. It's mileage, fuel, salary. It's all combined plus the distance.
Thank you. For sports for middle school, how is that done for teams that travel to other school sites?
It's just charged flat rates because we know exactly where they're going. They go to the same place every year. It's just a flat rate to that certain school.
And then that flat rate, who pays that? Is that that sports team or the school site?
The school site.
But something to note is that each middle school is allocated $80,000 for athletics plus an additional $2 per student. So even though it's coming from the school site's budget, because we try to give flexibility when school sites decide how they spend their budget, that money is actually just district money that was allocated.
Thank you.
Trustee Blakely.
Thank you. The middle school money, doesn't MVF pay for the athletics, or it provides money to each middle school? And that's part of what it covers, I would think, and coaching fees.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. The one other question that I had was on the who utilizes our buses charts with the number of field trips per site. I'm wondering whether the 5th grade science camp trips are included in that, or is that separate?
Those trips are too far. So we typically use charter buses for those, just because of the amount of students that are going. So that's not really factored in.
So these are more just standard kind of field trips, like you go to the museum or the zoo or something. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a clarifying question about that. So those numbers for each school site, those are the number of trips they've taken on school buses, but those schools may have had other field trips, but on charter buses that are not allocated here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Trustee Lambert.
Roughly, does every class have an opportunity to go on a field trip during the year?
So we do have the capacity to send every class on a field trip during the year.
That's another way of answering the question. The next question is, it sounds like a lot of logistics goes into organizing field trips. And like I wouldn't want to do it. To facilitate the ability to have kids go on field trips, does the district provide any additional support in terms of forms, finding destinations, dealing with people at the destinations, getting the parents organized to help out? Or is this all up to the teachers?
There's several field trips each year that are facilitated by the district. So there's environmental. Kathy Bauer might be able to jump in on some of the locations for some of the environmental field trips. Walden West, we do the big ones with Yosemite. But Trustee Lambert, you're right, for the smaller field trips, there is not a district facilitation. Oftentimes it's driven by the teacher and sometimes interest on what it is they're studying.
Right, I'll save the rest for my comments. Thanks.
There's also, so Deer Hollow, which is in part funded by the city of Mountain View, I don't know if their process is still the same, but when I was in the classroom now going on over a decade ago, they had a day where teachers from the districts that they served could come and there was a drawing and your order and the drawing allowed you to pick a date. And so you kind of got what you got. You get what you get and you don't get upset, right? But every classroom in our district, I think, is eligible for that, but it doesn't mean that everyone knew about it or was there, even though it's free. But we would still have to pay for buses to get there.
I do want to point out one of the things we're exploring. Our bus department, our transportation department under Director Perone has been working to bring TransFinder up and going. And so while there's been conversation, we've been communicating. And there is a TransFinder bus route option that will, right now we're using a Google Sheet that we may be able to use. We currently are down a dispatcher. So we're working on the back end to make these things work, but our goal is to try and bring that online also, that it will help with sort of the ease of scheduling buses, because right now it is a first come, first serve, but I think some of the frustrations from sites stems from, even though they get an email back saying, hey, let's try to reschedule, that they may just simply take it as a no and not think about like, well, maybe I can go on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. And so you bringing TransFinder online, if it's possible, could possibly help with getting people to start using us a little bit more. And selfishly, I just want to point out that it will also help us to, one of the challenges we have with electrifying our fleet is that we don't put enough miles on our buses, even though they meet the age requirements. And so if we can do more field trips, this also will help us to swap out our fleet because we need the miles to catch up on. So there's an incentive for us to do it also.
I just had one last question, and then if we're done after that, I think we can move on to public comment. Have we surveyed teachers or principals about kind of the field trip scheduling needs? Because the more I think back on this, so sometimes that say you're going to be teaching a unit on the missions in, let's say, February. And so you want to plan a field trip to a specific site, but that site, especially if you're going to one of the missions, might not schedule that far out. And so you have to wait until, let's say, November for them to be able to allow you to book a date. And so have we reached out to kind of better understand if teachers were to choose one essential field trip for their grade level that they would want school buses provided for by the district, how does the scheduling for that work?
Yeah, we've actually been talking about it quite a bit in the leadership team with all the principals about scheduling and what it would look like. So we did talk about how much time would you need in the beginning of the year. And Trustee Conley, the same question about 2 weeks would be really tight came up. But a month might be a little bit more doable. And that they thought that within the first month, they could come up with the trips that they needed to attend, or the most important ones. Because you're right, there's some trips they're not able to schedule until a little bit later. But they thought that the first month would be reasonable to get in, I guess, the ones they prefer the most.
And that was in conversation with their teachers and their parent volunteers scheduling the field trips.
I need to ask. This was really just with the principals asking, and I assume they have a good feel for their teachers and volunteers. But we can go back and ask more. I see Kathy here, so she might have something to add as well.
Well, I was just going to go back to the 4th and 5th grade trips that we run that are paid for through MVEF. And Trustee Lambert was asking about coordination. So we do the trips are done in bundles, so the schools get a in-class program and they get a field trip. So we actually bring the providers into a meeting in the beginning of the year, and the teachers can all come to that meeting, and the providers are all there so they can schedule their trips right on site. So we do try to make it easier to do that. The sites do have to schedule the bus because the buses won't, I mean, the trips don't fit within the other parameters. Most of the time for using district buses, we usually have to use outside transportation, but then once the site secures the bus, we handle making sure it's paid and all of that. So we do provide some support for those trips as well as Walden West and Yosemite.
I also just want to point out, I think in defense of teachers and staff, they've been so focused on trying to address COVID loss. And some of these organizations are just, opened up afterwards that I think, we've seen a steady decline in the number of trips that people have been taken. And so I'm not, in their defense, they're doing the right thing. I think it's sort of people are sort of like, well, which one do I do? Do I do remediation, cost, MTSS, and field trips? And we need to figure out what the right balance is. But I do think, we can make it all work. We just need to refigure some things or reconfigure some items to sort of make that happen. So I don't think any principal or any teacher isn't trying. I know that's not what you're implying.
No, not at all.
I just think like in the midst of dealing with all the things after COVID, it's just been one of the things that sort of fallen to the wayside and hasn't been on our mind until the board brought it up saying, well, wait a minute, why aren't we doing more field trips, or why this look a different way? And I think both the principals as well as Dr. Westover, Director Perone, have really been doing it, and Ms. Bauer and her team have really been doing a good job. It's like, it's really important for you to get kids out, and you should. And I think even with our new curriculum adoption, there will be yet another opportunity, especially around ELA, to find some other types of connections to the curriculum, because this is a chance for us to reset instructional expectations. And so this will be a good moment to say, like, it's okay for you to take a trip down to this place and have kids write or read about it.
And just to clarify, the school site allocations on slide 15, those aren't school site allocations for field trips specifically. That is just the overall funding that is provided as an allocation to each school site for the principal to use their discretion with their school site council, obviously, in terms of how they're going to spend it for their site. Yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will take public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on field trip transportation options, you may raise your hand in Zoom, press star 9 on your phone, or if you're in person, you can approach the podium and submit a yellow card. All right, at this time, we have one in-person speaker and one online speaker. We'll allocate 3 minutes per speaker. We're going to start with our in-person speaker, and then we'll move to our online speaker. Let's get that timer up. All right, you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, President. I've already written to you about this. It's a bit mathematical, and I've also written to Dr. Westover. It's about the transportation dollar site allotment calculation, right? How that number was gotten. The UPP that's used is based on unduplicated, and it's not a federal poverty level number. Only about 3/4 of the unduplicated here in Mountain View schools are SED. Remember, the unduplicated is SED, language learners, homeless, and foster care. SED last year, then your current year numbers seems to be a much fairer way to boost poor school trip resources. The SED number as the $200 coefficient seems much more aligned with equity also. Love your neighbor families as you love your family. These are poor families. They don't have a lot of money to contribute to the PTAs for extra field trips, or to their class for an extra field trip, or to bring on an astronomy demonstration into their school. I urge you board members to direct your administration, your administrators, to therefore substitute the SED number for the UPP method that they now use. I wonder if there's any questions on the math. There's 1 minute left. You all understood all that math that I sent you, right? I know Dr. Lamper did.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. We will now move on to our online speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, this is Joseph. Yes.
Oh, sorry, that's my son. My name is Laura Calvis. I'm on the board at Stevenson Elementary, and I just wanted to say thank you for this conversation, first of all. My primary comment back is to echo that of it would be very difficult to be able to book our field trip locations with those vendors within the first 2 weeks of school. And that would be a challenge for all of the elementary schools. And so I just think it would be appreciated from everyone if that window could be expanded to allow some more flexibility and time to strategize with the teachers at the beginning of the school year. That's it.
All right. Are there comments from trustees? Vice President Chang.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this item to the board. I wanted to comment on the side question of that our district doesn't permit parents to volunteer to drive, and while I think it's so directly related to the usage of our buses. I wanted the board to be aware that we're the only local school district that doesn't allow parents to drive. So, excuse me, that's my daughter, so I'll call her back later. Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Los Altos, Palo Alto Unified, and Los Altos School District all allow parent drivers. They all have a slightly different policy. Los Altos School District encourages parent drivers to be limited to 15 miles from the school site, so for parent volunteers for only local driving. MVLA and Palo Alto Unified, they do what we used to do, just check to see that the drivers have the proper insurance and are in good standing order as a driver. Sunnyvale has the most interesting policy. Sunnyvale, as part of what they call the Better Impact, they did this change to their volunteer system where, similar to us, all volunteers need to be do fingerprinting and the TB testing. And if they meet that first criteria, then they go through that second criteria. If they also have proper insurance and have good driving standing, then they can drive. So in Sunnyvale, all their drivers, volunteer drivers, are cleared as their district as volunteers. So they're safe enough to be in a classroom, they're safe enough to drive. I think the reason I bring that up is, the last item on preschool, we had opportunity there to as a board, as policy to do something value added. I actually, in respect to the district, I think us being the only school district in this area to prohibit parent volunteers from driving, we as policy on the administrative level have made the lives harder for PTAs, for classroom teachers. We are making it harder to teach. And it's one of the few times as a board member where it's okay if we don't do something value added. It's great when we do something value added. It's horrible when we make policy that's actually making it harder to have a good instruction and good education. I echo President Connolly that as a teacher, when I plan field trips, to think that I need to have all my field trips anticipated in the first 2 weeks or even expanded to the first 4 weeks of the school year, and that if I didn't think of something in the first 4 weeks, then I have limited my options, keeping in mind that even with the current plan, 50% of trips have been denied. I know for many different reasons, but we've denied 50% of our field trips. I mean, with 4 large buses in our district, we can't possibly like meet all the needs of every single school site if we were really wanting kids to learn off-site. Like, I think that this is a yes and. Like, I really hope the board would ask the district to reconsider and find some way to allow parental driving, perhaps the way that Sunnyvale does it. I think definitely the way Sunnyvale does it, require them to be fingerprinted, done the TB testing, make sure they have the proper insurance. Because there was a question on the board Q&A about why we stopped that, and we stopped parents driving because part of it was safety, which I think the fingerprinting could solve that. The other part was equity. And I actually think that relying only on buses actually exacerbates the equity issue, because you look at the PTAs in the report, and PTAs are funding anywhere from $3 to $157 per student. The more schools that have to rely on the buses actually is an equity issue, versus if we augment that with allowing what every other school district around us does, is for parents to drive for local school trips, then it frees up the buses to provide more services, so more opportunities for field trips. So I don't know if I've convinced anyone on the board. I recognize that we've in the last year deferred to the superintendent. Our board policy in 3541 says that we can allow parent drivers. It's the same board policy that CSBA recommends for every school district. We are one of the few school districts who've taken that CSBA policy and interpreted it to mean that we don't allow parents to drive. And I just encourage the board to consider asking the superintendent to change that. Thank you.
Can I ask one question related to that? And then Dr. Rudolph, definitely please comment. My understanding, as a clarifying question, is that the only school site that uses parent drivers, or that used to use parent drivers, was Stevenson. Is that correct, that the other school sites did not?
That was correct.
Okay, and then Dr. Rudolph.
Just for contextual purposes, just as you deliberate, Sunnyvale actually does extremely limited busing for field trips. So we went over, we looked at the transportation department, tried to understand and look at cost efficiencies, and they were very clear that, they're not doing the exact same approach as us. And so, as you deliberate, I need that context to be there, that yes, they may have parent drivers, but at the same time, their transportation department is not fulfilling to the same rate that we are, or even coming close to what we're doing in terms of providing transportation for students. So it's just a contextual thing. I'm not here to debate. You can set whatever policy you want, but I do think it's important for that distinction to be made, that, what you would be saying is yes and, right? So do this plus allow parents, not comparing us apples to apples to Sunnyvale, because it would be reducing the amount of buses that we use and increasing the amount of parents that we use.
Trustee Lambert.
So I think the objective of this presentation is to try to sort of improve the process, have more of kids going on field trips, have more field trips. And so whatever policies put in place should support that. We talked about 2 weeks before school, 4 weeks. If we did it twice, if it was done twice a year, okay? At work, I'm supposed to write down at the beginning of the year what conferences I'm going to go to. I literally have no idea, right? And then I have to beg, right? So it doesn't work very well. I would try to facilitate the chances of SED students going on field trips, not just Castro, but throughout the district. I would also, like I said before, try to put a process in place that is really helpful to the teachers, so that it takes a lot of the work and burden off of them, deciding where to go on field trips, when to go on field trips, setting up all the logistics. Ask the teachers what would be helpful to them, so that the idea is they can spend their time teaching in the classroom and not doing all of this stuff after school. A lot of work.
Trustee Berman.
I agree, Trustee Lambert. Yeah, it's something that's going to make it easy for teachers, right? So I remember when we eliminated the parent drivers, it was important to the board to make sure that there wasn't sort of this lack of field trip opportunity across school sites, that we would sort of get a chance to hear back if it was really impactful on school districts, then we can revisit the conversation. I don't feel like I've heard that across our district. I'm wondering, Dr. Rudolph, if you've heard from schools that sense that change, that schools have really been impacted and not able to go on the field trips that they would have gone on had they had parent drivers.
I think Stevenson's probably is the one school. Most schools more used to either scheduling a bus, would use a different school district or get a charter. And they were the only ones. Stevenson was the main user of drivers. I do, we can get better. We've gotten better at our scheduling system, but I think there are options like TransFinder out there that can make it even easier for scheduling. I do think that that's part of the problem. And then again, I think historically, in defense of everyone, right? So you have the transportation department that's trying to fulfill their needs. And they're trying to make sure they can get back to get kids to and from. And then you have teachers and school sites who have hacked the system, so used to hacking the system, meaning they find a workaround because they knew that transportation couldn't fulfill it. And so by making adjustments to times, trying to prioritize scheduling, and I think bringing online another system that makes it easier if you can't. I just got a spreadsheet actually from Stevenson that talked about field trips that were canceled, and Director Perone was like, here are the reasons why. And then the email will get tomorrow. It's like, is there a way that we can make this a little bit easier so that they can see, I can't get it this day, I get it that way. And that's when both him and Director Aker were like, TransFinder may be able to do it. I think putting these things in place will make it a lot easier so that more school sites can use them. And that it will be helpful, because I think all of our school sites not only struggle with volunteers to get to drive to and from, and there's a logistical issue that comes with it, but also just, most school districts, Santa Clara, that have more buses that were outsourcing it, are also starting to pull back and not provide buses because they have their own needs. And so we're doing our best, and I know we're down to 2 drivers, but we're doing our best to sort of fulfill it. But I haven't heard the clamor that this has been as big of an issue, but I think everybody's trying to work within the system and trying to figure out a way to make it work. And I know, so Stevenson's being patient with the process and working to try and fulfill the needs. And I think even like you said before, all of you said that even the 2-week scheduling at the very beginning is something that we just have to revisit and we can redo, but putting in a better system would definitely help so that you don't feel obligated to try and schedule at the beginning of the year when you have no idea of where you want to go or why you want to be there. So I think these things can help, and we can get better at what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, and I think I like the idea of having, making sure everyone has done that first request, like it's stated on the slide, before the second request is taken. And I don't know what the time lapse is there, if it's like 2 weeks after everything's been scheduled or a month, just to make sure everyone has a little bit of time to reach out to their whatever spot they want to go visit, that they have time to set that up and make that request. Yeah.
I think it sounded like the bar we're shooting for is 1 guaranteed bus field trip for every child in the district, which is a lot logistically, right? But I can give some context. At Mistral, the PTA's goal is to fund 3 field trips per grade level. So every child gets 3 field trips. At Stevenson, the goal is 10 field trips per year. When I was a teacher at Stevenson, I did 20 field trips a year with kindergarten. Just Think about that. It was so much fun, and it was so mind-blowing for those little ones, right? To just go everywhere. But some of those were walking field trips. We could walk, you build them up over the school year. You start out going nearby, and then you take them to Rangsdorf Park, and then you take them to Whole Foods, and then you take them to KMTV. But I agree with Trustee Chang that when we're talking about equity in terms of trying to distribute resources, I think the argument that allowing parent drivers wherever they are able to have the capacity to help is a value add. And I understand that not every parent is going to feel comfortable or qualify to be a parent driver. But I don't think we as a district are blocking them. It's a little bit different. We have to meet these state requirements about fingerprinting now. And so we're talking about how to provide that in a free way. I don't have the expectation that the district should be providing auto insurance so that more people can be drivers, because you can chaperone. Field trips need more chaperones than they have drivers. So you can still chaperone on the field trip, even if you aren't a parent driver. It's not boxing people out to a certain extent. So I would be in favor of doing something like Sunnyvale. I would love that. I wish all sites would utilize it, but I think that probably only Stevenson will continue to do so. Maybe it will spread. But Trustee Blakely.
Thank you. I don't feel that strongly about parent drivers. It seems like the system's workable. I know there were trips when my kids were at Landals that they walked to the train station and took the train. So I feel like there's multiple points of access, and but just generally, I think what you've presented is good. And I do like a little bit longer of a time period in the beginning. And this TransFinder thing sounds great. Whatever you can do to make it easier, both on the staff, the administrative staff, but also teachers, is great. I can't imagine 20 field trips. Like, how are you ever going to teach? I mean, it's experiential learning, and that's wonderful too. So I'm sure there's a way to balance it. But thank you.
You make them right the whole way. Trustee Berman.
So I think about parent drivers. Okay, I can sort of wrap my mind around parent drivers. I think about some unintended consequence. Let's say, let me just call out Castro, for example, where you may not have the same number of available parents to drive that you would at Stevenson. So it's the consequence then that you have a school that gets to have all of these experiences as an added benefit to the education, which I love. But then how do we equate that, right? Like, how do we create equity with maybe a school community that doesn't have the ability to do that? And I also wonder, is there a maximum number of field trips that we want? I want all the kids to have lots of experiences, but is there sort of like a range for all the schools of how many field trips? 20, 30, 15, as many as possible, as long as it fits with the program, whatever they're teaching.
Vice President Chang.
I don't know, was that a question for staff or?
No, I think I'm just thinking out loud, right?
Well,
And I think that's coming from, I know that there's in some schools after, having seen some long conversations with Castro, hearing that I think that they would really benefit from the experiences, and they're also really struggling to get, long learning blocks and being in school because they feel like there's this urgency to do a lot of good work with students. So I'm wondering how do we balance that, right, with wanting them to also have these rich experiences?
One way I would respond to that is that I think with most things with equity, we should be focusing on what's a floor and not a ceiling. And what I mean by that is, because Stevenson does a lot of field trips doesn't mean we should dial them back because other schools don't have them, right? We should consider what is the floor of what is a rich elementary school experience, or middle school and ensure that we fund that, right? Like we have the buses and we're getting more drivers. And in reality, not only do I think that, we shouldn't be holding Stevenson back. I think that by having Stevenson have to draw only upon our bus system is actually drawing a resource from those who need that service even more, right? There's also the question of the amount of money that PTA or school site funds are being used for transportation. That's a trade-off, right? That's could have been used for classroom materials or books or all kinds of things. All kinds of things that the PTA typically would be funding. Many PTAs had said to us last time that this is a new budget item for them, or at least it's had to grow. And I know that's particularly Stevenson who had said that, but I believe it was more than Stevenson had said that they are allocating money now more and maybe it's just because it's brought to their attention what transportation could mean. I appreciate President Connolly's support for exploring this idea of a Sunnyvale system. If there are not 3 board members that support that, I would then say that at the very least, can we encourage the district to not use school site funds or PTA funds for transportation, because that is a direct trade-off. The money they're spending on $259 to go to Palo Alto or $490 to go to San Francisco is money they're not spending on science equipment or books for the classroom. And so I understand that the Business Transportation Office needs to account for it, but we on the district level can move money around, right? Without it being a direct trade-off to PTA funds and site level funds. I don't know if there's but why? Why should why should the PTA have to raise money for our buses? There's other things they could be raising money for.
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, why should anybody have to raise money for anything? I mean, it's fungible, and we give the school sites choice in their site plans for how they want to allocate certain things. Different PTAs fundraise for different things. MVF has sort of coalesced around particular funding, although they added some new programs with the additional middle school teachers a couple of years back. But I like the ability for sites and site administrators and staff to prioritize where they want to spend it.
So, if I may, I think having a shared base of field trip experiences that we want children to have across the district as a minimum starting point that we provide, I think is the way to start for equity. And so I'm in favor of scheduling the buses like this. I am interested in Trustee Lambert's idea of having 2 different points in the year where there are signups. I think that's a really good idea. And extending the window, so maybe it's you get a month at the beginning of the year and you get a month when you come back in January or something like that to put in your field trip request. And after that first field trip is met, I would be in favor of perhaps waiting the opportunity for students from Castro to get prioritized in the bus allocation for the second and third rounds, if that makes sense. Could the equity be in making sure there's some extra opportunity there? Because I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure that most school sites, and please correct me if I'm wrong, are not actually using a significant amount of their school site budget to fund the field trips. They're relying on the PTAs. And that's a capacity that our Castro PTA does not have. And so it's important that we make more field trips available for them. But I also agree with Trustee Chang. I don't think it means limiting the possibility for more. There are some times where one school site having more of something takes away from another school site. And that isn't this situation where there's a set amount and we're divvying up the pie, and we need to, which we've run into like with teachers, for example, when a classroom is under enrolled and at another site, there's not a teacher for a class, and we have to consolidate a classroom and move someone. That's a limited resource. The limited resource here is the school buses we have. And that's where maybe waiting Castro after everybody gets the first round free or, guaranteed, and then Castro gets priority for rounds 2 and 3 or something like that might deal with the equity issue there. But I don't think a cap is actually creating equity.
Yep. Thanks for the discussion. Yeah, I think you're completely right. So yeah, I think I agree with the, checking in twice during the year, prioritizing Castro through the second and potentially third round. So we make sure that they have an opportunity to use the buses to go and have the shared experience as a classroom. And I would be definitely open to exploring perhaps the Sunnyvale model of parent drivers to see what that would be like. What would that look like in our district?
It would mean that parent drivers would sign up for the DMV program so that we would have knowledge of their driving record, so they would need to consent. I think we unlike Sunnyvale, we are not in the position to put ourselves at any additional risk because of, as I put in the comments, because of 2 pending lawsuits. And so that there's no way I would recommend that we would allow parent drivers without submitting to that secondary process. That means that their driving records will be available for us to pull at any given, for us to pull right before the field trips. That would have to be one. It's just too, we're in a precarious position as it stands right now. And so I just can't see us moving past that one hurdle.
Vice President Chang?
Just wanted to be a fourth to support the idea of the Trustee Lambert saying like twice a year of bus requests and of Castro's prioritization, and that and recognizing, I understand Stevenson's one of the only few who really relies on parent drivers. I would think it would be very safe to say that those parent drivers will go through any safety hurdle that the district throws our way, and that will free up the resources, just as President Conley said. I think they will happily rise to that threshold for the safety of their kids and to abide by whatever district policy would be to allow them to do that, to carry out the program, and that would free the resource, free up the buses for the rest of the schools. Thank you so much.
Not enough direction?
Yep, we'll come back. We'll probably just submit it in the report, but I think there's a couple of adjustments we can make. If I'm correct, I think we had 3 for the DM, at least if we allow parents with that additional hurdle for DMV. Yes, I heard, I think 4 for, or actually all 5 for prioritizing Castro. And then I think we can look at it from either twice a year or trimester. However, we will try to prioritize as many field trips to be done. And then I will touch base with our curriculum team to see if it's possible that we can at least create a suggested list of field trips that could go based off of curriculum. I don't know if that one's doable for next year, but we can at least look into that.
I think there would be strength in reaching out to the PTA presidents, because most PTAs have a field trip coordinator who then advises the classroom field trip coordinators. It's a kind of trickle down. So they might have some really good insight about curriculum tied field trips.
Yep. And then the last thing, just real quick, just to sort of a hanging chad, just as, I mean, you steal from Peter to pay Paul, or steal from Paul to pay Peter, whichever way it goes, right? So if we were to prioritize field trips, it would mean that we would pull money away from the site allocation, because we actually do dole out a lot of our money that goes directly to the site. So what you would end up seeing is a reduction in the per pupil formula in order to create a line item for field trips. And that's, I mean, the board can definitely direct us on it, but there's just not any more funds that exist that we could pull to pay for field trips.
Is that beyond the proposed process? Because that wasn't listed anywhere in the presentation. that it
I'm
would,
just based off of what you're saying in terms of trying to figure out how to create a line item. What I'm saying is that the only way to make it a field trip line item so that the burden isn't on PTAs, or the burden isn't on
there
removing.
was not a consensus around that.
Right.
There was no board direction on that.
Okay. Just
Yeah, there was no board direction that there, sorry, we can do a straw poll.
Question though, a clarifying question.
Yes.
Is there any existing formula we could rely on that would, the school sites that are most socioeconomically disadvantaged have their site funds protected, and then those more resource communities can lean more on their PTA? Is there any kind of formula we can use to protect sites like Castro from having to make this, trade-off about that?
I think and having been a principal in different areas, our site, I'm not arguing that everybody gets as much as they would love, but I can tell you, having been at a site with 2,500 kids, that's Title I, our sites receive more money than what I received with 2,500 kids. I think the challenge is that it's competing priorities. So Castro does get additional funds for its unduplicated count, more than what Amaya would get, which is why we want to show that example. However, Amaya's PTA, will fund the difference, but it's a value proposition, so they have to, their PTA isn't as strong, it doesn't raise as much money. And so as a result of that, they would have to dedicate the funds to pay for it. So I think we could create a line item that could prioritize field trips. And then, we could probably play with it a little bit. But I think that's probably going to take a little bit more work for us to figure out what that looks like if we're trying to create equity within that sense.
I just didn't think that there was board direction for that. So let me clarify with the board. Does the board want to create a line item for field trips so that PTAs aren't funding them? Straw poll. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, no. Take that off your plate.
Got it.
All right, on that note, thank you so much, Dr. Westover. Happy birthday. We will spare you our singing, but hope that you have a wonderful rest of your birthday. And we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is board updates, item 8. Are there any board updates from trustees? Trustee Blakely.
Thank you, President Conley. I just wanted to provide, I'm the JPA representative from our school district for CHAC, and the environment in which mental health services are provided is rapidly evolving with both new challenges and opportunities. CHAC has a 50-year history of providing critical support to individuals and families in the communities of Los Altos Hills, Mountain View, and beyond. And the CHAC board is committed to maintaining these critical community and school-based services that our communities rely on during the changing environment. But structural fiscal challenges in 2023 impacted CHAC services. Most notably, the clinic was placed on hiatus on August 1st. In response, the CHAC board and staff have developed a sustainability plan. In the sustainability evaluation, it was determined that CHAC needed to develop capacity in Medi-Cal, as well as private insurance billing to increase stability. A partnership or merger is the best way to add this capacity to CHAC's infrastructure, as well as to enhance the services in the region. So on January 24th, the CHAC board voted to move into a due diligence phase with Pacific Clinics, the merger partner selected through a series of meetings and considerations of mission, values, and stability. The due diligence process will include consideration of whether or not the current Joint Powers Authority, the JPA, structure is the best way for CHAC to be organized going forward. And CHAC staff is happy to meet with JPA partner representatives on the board and our governing bodies if people want to pursue this further as we move through the due diligence process. So I just wanted to share that update.
Thank you very much, Trustee Blakely. Vice President Chang.
Oh, I had a question. I saw that there was a CSBA Basic Aid District update. I don't know if anyone attended that today. If there was there any news from it?
I did attend it. It was very, very informative. The discussion was, there were a lot of questions and clarifications around TK facilities that came up again and again and again. And I think, something that I didn't understand before was Trustee Berman referred to districts who might not have fully implemented TK yet. There's actually, there's some different penalties that are being imposed, financial penalties. So for example, if a district, this was an interesting one to me, if a district in trying to flesh out their TK classrooms enrolls some slightly younger students who might qualify in 2 years but don't qualify yet, they have to drop to that 10-to-1 ratio instead of 12-to-1 ratio, or there's a financial penalty from the state. So it was mostly kind of minutia like that, very detailed questions from different districts. But what came out of it, there was such a positive response, and there were over 40 trustees from San Mateo and Santa Clara counties on there, that our PACER, Rita is going to look at with Chris Reefs, the director of, is he a director? But he's government affairs. They're going to look at trying to have more meetings like this, because there was so much interest and because it's going to be an ever-changing landscape, and the needs of basic aid districts are very different from LCFF districts. So I would keep your eyes out for another one, maybe quarterly is the hope, but we'll see what happens. And then I have a couple of updates. I sent trustees an invitation through SCC SBA, the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, for the legislative brunch that is coming up on March 9th. It's an in-person event. It's from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. with breakfast starting at 8:45 if you want to get there early for breakfast, at the Fremont High School District, their district office. So it's pretty nearby for us, which is great. We have Linda Darling. I'm a co-chair of the event, and my job is getting everyone to show up. And then my counterpart is doing a wonderful job arranging all the facilities and the catering and helping kind of keep me on track. We have John Fensterwald, who used to be at the San Jose Mercury News as an editor and is now an editor-at-large at EdSource, is our moderator for the event. He's been doing this for over a decade. He's fantastic. He's so knowledgeable. Dr. Linda Darling Hammond, who is the president of the California State Board of Education, is going to be our keynote speaker kicking off the event. She will be joining us virtually, but she has a really solid long chunk of time, and the conversation is always very, very interesting and enlightening. Then we will have Speaker of the Assembly, Robert Rivas, is going to give remarks in person, followed by our county panel. This year we have Supervisor Otto Lee and President of the Board of Supervisors, Susan Ellenberg, will be in discussion with our moderator about education policy within the county and how counties support schools. Our first state panel, so far, not everyone has finalized their RSVPs, but so far our first state panel is going to have Assemblymember Kalra, Senator Cortese, and Assemblymember Pellerin. We'll then have our second keynote speaker, which is Senator John Laird. Senator Laird is the chair of the Budget Education Subcommittee. He is one of the best resources on the education funding within the state of California that I've ever met. He has keynoted for us in the past as well. So he has his own spotlight time because we want to hear as much as we can from him. And then our second state panel has Assemblymember Lee, Assemblymember Berman, and there's at least one, I'm forgetting somebody. I've still got feelers out to a few people to flesh out, Senator Becker. There's been some changes in staff for some of the different legislators, or their schedulers might have changed. So we're just finalizing details, and fingers crossed, Congressman Ro Khanna is trying to join us. It might be virtual, it might be in person. It just depends on what his travel schedule is going to be that day. So we don't have it pinned down quite yet, but his staff is actively trying to make sure that he can be there. He has attended in the past too. and he is very knowledgeable about education and great to hear. So highly recommend you go. If that wasn't a good enough pitch, I'd really like you to turn up. The district, you can ask Nancy to register you for the Evite. I want to say it's like $35 maybe a ticket. And then the second thing is that our district is hosting Santa Clara County School Board trustees for a tour of our teacher housing. This is going to be March 7th at 4 p.m. That invitation went out through the emails today, the internets today. And I did have a question. One trustee has already reached out from another district to ask if they can bring their superintendent or other administrative staff with them.
Yeah, as long as we know the numbers,
Okay.
It should be doable. Well, we've already reached out to Perry as well as Mark, and we will make it work. The building will probably be closer, so it's possible we may just break up into different groups and take them different pathways through the building.
That sounds wonderful. The executive team at SCCSBA reached out to me to ask if we would host a tour. That's kind of how it originated, and it's a great time to do it since we haven't occupied the space yet. Please RSVP for that by March 1st if you're going to come. I know it's our district, so it's easy to show up, but you've probably already seen it. Okay. All right, so Trustee Blakely and Berman will not be there, but if either of you would like to go back or haven't been yet. And then finally, we'll take public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on board updates, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press star 9 on your phone, or approach the podium. I do not see many members of the public for this. Item 9 is our future board meeting dates. Our regularly scheduled meetings, we have February 29th is our environmental sustainability plan update. March 14th is reclassification and our EL program update. April 18th, we'll have an update on transportation. That was a change of date. Originally, it had been scheduled earlier in April, and we have moved it to April 18th. We have a board retreat this weekend, February 10th at Crittenden. It is not what's considered a regularly scheduled meeting. It is basically a special meeting. It doesn't quite fall on our regular schedule.
Correct, and the time was adjusted to 8:30.
Okay. It starts at 8:30. Part of the board retreat involves student leaders from Crittenden giving us a tour of the site and talking about the outdoor facilities. And we needed to meet their schedule and also get our meeting work done. So that's why it moved to 8:30. Do you have a question?
Well, is there anything else information on what the second half of the meeting is?
It's the agenda.
The agenda, I think it went out. It
went
did,
out, but it's
she's
gonna be
adjusted it,
adjusted.
so the end time is ended at 2. So the items that are on the governance calendar, sorry, I guess.
It also includes a Brown Act resolution as well. We'll take public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public, you can raise your hand in Zoom, press star 9 on your phone, or approach the podium. Because we only have a few minutes left, I'm going to allow a minute and a half for public comment, so we'll get that timer up.
On the retreat, is that being recorded or is it just available for, it's not going to be recorded, I'm
the
assuming?
recording facilities at Crittenden.
We don't have,
Okay.
so it will be,
Right.
but
It just made sense with trying to incorporate the students in the tour to actually be there instead of having to transport everybody.
Makes sense.
All right, let's do our public comment before we run out of time. You may begin.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to really comment. This says future board meeting dates, but it does leave off this planned board meeting. And you're right, it isn't in the normal format that your regular meetings are, and it wasn't set up at the beginning, but by law, it's considered a regular meeting, even though you're doing it in a different format. It's not a special meeting. It's not an emergency meeting. That means it's a regular meeting. So I really wish you would please put these planned meetings on this list, because some of us start to get to be senior memory, and we don't necessarily always remember, oh yeah, there's an extra meeting that wasn't on this one, wasn't on last meeting's future board meeting dates. If somebody's reading this agenda, they will have no clue unless they happen to look in the right place. And so it really makes it confusing. Make it easy for the community members. Please make it real easy. Real easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there are further comments from trustees at 9:59 p.m.